everyone, and welcome back to Reviews with Tyberius D. We're taking on the biggest project that I've had to do yet, and the reason why I have to bring out our good friend Nate Dallin is because, quite honestly, I can't do it all alone. There's so many movies, there's so much content here, and quite honestly, I would ramble to death if it was just me here. So I brought in our friend Nate Dallin. He is an immigration lawyer outside of Omaha, Nebraska, and a wonderful friend of the community. We have him for geopolitical content when it comes to, immigration. We bring him in a lot. And every now and again, we have him on Mask Off and what used to be the Right Wing panel. So definitely go check out all the other content that we do. He's great. He's one of the fan favorites. And chat's already hyping it up that you're here back. So it's good to see you, buddy.
All right, well, thanks for having me. I always like when I get the text from Ty, and he's like, hey, what are you doing tonight? I'm like, I know. It's time. It's time to get back on the pod, so I'm excited.
Yep. I want to give a quick shout out, real quick, before we get started, to a podcast that Nate used to be a guest on, who unfortunately had a tragedy ways back, and I think it's been over a year now, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's been exactly a year, 10 days ago.
Yeah. So anyway, this podcast was called The Geek, the Nerd, and the Tangent. It was three guys that got together to talk about the wonderful things of what they do regarding basically a bunch of nerd stuff. And they were good folks. I didn't really ever get to talk to them. I was hoping to be a guest at one point, but I never got invited. But on the other side of that is that basically what happened is one of the creators passed away suddenly. And I want to use this episode basically as a shining homage. And remind me if I've got the name correct. It was Brett, wasn't it?
That's exactly right, yeah.
So, I didn't get a chance to watch a lot of the episodes, but, you know, this one's to Brett, just to basically sound off, and we hope his family is doing very well.
Yeah, no, it was a really sad situation. He's 1 year older than me. He's 36 years old, and was putting his kids to bed, and then he just collapsed, and it was over. Brain aneurysm, instant death. So it was really tragic, very hard times. And I think, Ty, this is one of the reasons you heard my voice first on that podcast, right?
I did.
And we talked about Star Wars and some of my hot takes on The Last Jedi. I think that was a 2.5-hour marathon just on that film. So buckle up, everybody. If we're talking Marvel, we're going to have a lot of things to talk about. It's going to be great.
All right, so anyway, without further ado, sorry to start on a somber note, but we just wanted to give that shout out, or at least I did. So to start it off, it is Iron Man back in May of 2008. I hope, I think this one's going to be a pretty universal, but we'll definitely get into that. Anyway, starts off the MCU as we know it today. Robert Downey Jr. is cast as Tony Stark, the Iron Man himself. Directed by Jon Favreau, a few other folks, you know. If there's any if there's anything that we need to throw in there. But yeah, release date, May 2nd, 2008. I enjoyed this movie. I liked it quite a bit. I'm not going to say it's A tier. I think it's actually B tier for me. Going from, you know, basically S, A, B, C, D, and F, right? Is that for me, it's B tier. It's a decent movie. I quite like it. And it's a great start off to the MCU. The problem that I have with it is that I don't think it explored the character of Tony Stark very well, and I was actually quite amazed, although I realized why they didn't later, is that Tony Stark is not an alcoholic in the MCU, like he is in the comics.
In comic books, right. That's his thing.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to talk about this for a second. So, why do you think Marvel, not just in the cinematic universe, but why do you think Marvel sort of overtook DC in its general fandom? Like from your own experience? I mean, DC's been around much longer, so why did Marvel do so well?
I think the reason is twofold. Number one is that if you look at the power scaling between DC and Marvel is closer to home in the regards that, like, they're super powered, but they're not demigods. Like DC.
Man, it took them 40 years over at DC to figure out he could be hurt or something like that.
Something like that, yeah. Like all of the Marvel characters are a lot more human to me, and they're a lot more vulnerable to me. There's a few of them that are out there. Galactus is kind of stupidly powerful. Thanos gets kind of stupidly powerful at times, and if you want to get into like the Ultron 6 storyline, that gets pretty stupid too. But on a general level, Captain America is just a super dude, but he's not godlike.
Yeah.
And my problem here is, like, all of these characters are just more believable than their DC counterparts. Like, you know, for me, you know, a lot of comparisons are made between like Spider-Man and Batman, right? Or Spider-Man or I'm sorry, Batman and Tony Stark. And I'm just sitting here going, Batman would literally just beat the piss out of both of them. Like, it's ridiculous how powerful he is. He knows, like, he's like the world's greatest detective, and he does like 23 forms of martial arts. And I don't want to get into that because we're trying to do the MCU. But in a nutshell, to explain why I think the MCU works is that I think just at a grounded level, it makes more sense in this age. I think the reason why that wasn't the case back when it was like on TV and movies, is that movies are really good at portraying invulnerable characters, but it's only with the special effects of today that you have vulnerable characters with these powers able to be portrayed in a believable way. And I think it literally took...
It's fascinating. I find that I mostly agree with this take. I just want to add two tiny little wrinkles. The first is, I think that the interpersonal relationships between the Marvel characters is much more believable.
True.
Right, that to me is really big, because even so, I think I would rank, say, like The Dark Knight ahead of, I think, any of the Marvel films. Is that true? I might. Now, I'm not a hot take. That wasn't the point. That I was just going to say, even in that film, I don't know how believable all the relationships between the humans are. Right? I sort of political commentary and a bunch of other weird things about The Dark Knight, not necessarily because it's the most compelling film, right? So, but that's not the point. I just use that to highlight, to say I really like that, and I recognize that it's weak. I mean, Batman is not a real person. I mean, Christian Bale, much love and respect, but the relationships between those people, I mean, people don't act that way, right? Right? They just don't act that way. So, so I think that's important. And then the second one is the contract rights at the time of Iron Man 1 were super weird, because you sort of were getting into this, Ty, but Iron Man is not really the flagship bearer for all of Marvel, but because of the success of the films, he sort of, he used to be B tier, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's a B tier character. It was the X-Men, Spider-Man, right? And even Fantastic Four, historically. Fantastic Four, when they were coming out of the 70s and 80s. I mean, that was Marvel. And then they had a bunch of these supporting characters, which are all the B-level guys. How do we know this? Well, because which rights were purchased first? Right? Marvel was selling all these rights to make movies all throughout the late 90s, early 2000s. We already had 3 Spider-Man movies. We'd had some really crappy X-Men films, right? Like a bunch of stuff had already happened. And so when you get to Favreau in 2008, and what he sort of would like to see happen with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and just like the idea when it was very, very tiny before it exploded, he didn't have the A-list people to work with, right? I think in a lot of ways, Tony Stark, as we know him, has been punching above his weight for a long time. And it's because that movie was so good. People connected with that movie. I don't actually know all the details around that, but I think Favreau had to like lobby hard to even get Disney to finally run with it. Like, I think he was gonna, or to get, I think, had Disney just recently purchased them, or did they purchase them after? I don't even know.
I don't remember to that degree, and I do apologize for that.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I just mean to say that, like, when Favreau was sort of doing Iron Man 1, I don't know how well developed the entire universe was in his head. I don't think that there'd been, like, all these huge timelines. I think it was, hey, let's have a different vision for superheroes. Mm-hmm. And Tony Stark was deeply flawed, and really a wrecked person. And it was clear that he was a wrecked person. And then, you know, he's able to save the day, and he does it in this really spectacular way. And as you say, technology had just sort of hit that sweet spot where it was pretty seamless, right? So the graphics and what they were doing with Tony in particular, it worked. It worked really, really well. It all kind of came together, and then it launched and created the universe. I almost think on accident.
On a level, yeah. Now the question that I have is, like, where does Favreau end and like Kevin Feige begin? Because a lot of this has been his work as well. So there's definitely a conversation to be had there. But
yeah, I don't think Favreau stayed on. You know, like I said, I don't think he was ever thinking I'm going to go do 20 films. I think he did like the first couple, and then he was out, right? I mean, more or less. And then I think it was
I think Iron Man was his pet project, and he I think basically what he is responsible for, in a nutshell, and I could be wrong about this. I haven't studied him a lot. Is basically starting phase 1. He's really good at like kicking things off, showing people, like setting the tone, and people following through. And I'm just going to throw a quick shout out here. We're not going into this. The Mandalorian, as an example of that.
That's for another day.
Mm-hmm.
That's for another day. The last episode of season 2, guys. Not gonna lie, got a little misty-eyed. Some mist hit my eyes. Just gonna float that out there. So I rank this as S tier. This is I think that I only have 2 Marvel movies in the S tier, and this is one of them. That's mostly nostalgia, but because I remember very distinctly watching this film. So of course I'm Mormon, right? So I'd only been home from my mission like 8 or 9 months, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd been in Ecuador for 2 years, where I was cut off from everything. So I had no electronics, didn't see a single movie, right? I was just doing my thing. Came back. This was like the first film I can remember that was sort of, big and shattering, and really got me pumped.
Yeah. I enjoyed it very much. I thought it was good. I was in high school at the time. And it was a year after Transformers 1, right? And I just remember like that kind of thing. And I'm like, I'm sitting there like, I watched Transformers, I look this, and the graphics are just amazing. Because, I grew up, like, when I grew up, one of my favorite movies was Dragonheart, and I remember how good Draco looked. And he didn't even look dated all the way up until about the late 2000s. But now obviously it looks pretty crap. And it's just one of those deals to where it's only getting to now where the original Iron Man CGI back in 2008 is starting to look a little dated in the regards that you can kind of see like not the seams but the greenery in it.
Right. Well, yeah, when you put it on a 4K screen,
mm-hmm.
like I think all of our flaws start to pop once you get to that 4K level and beyond. So that makes sense. I just want to mention too, the Iron Man 1 did something that I thought was very prescient. It took on, and we'll see this in the other films, but it took on what was clearly a social issue of the time that people cared about. Like, this was 2008. We just gotten through the surge in Iraq, right?
Yep.
I mean, the surge was already over. I guess it had been over probably for close to a year, but you had Tony Stark sort of marooned in the middle of a bunch of caves somewhere in the Middle East, and the thing that's front and center is that he's an arms dealer and he's caused all this collateral damage, and he's been Mr. American Playboy, hasn't had to deal with the consequences of what his company does, doesn't really know what his company does. You know what I mean? Like, I actually think that some of the commentary of the moment made that film pop even more, because people cared. Like, setting people cared about, the fact that there were these American weapons on both sides of the conflict and had killed, civilians, and Tony had to stare that in the face and deal with that. I actually thought, from a social standpoint, like, man, that was pretty intense. I mean, it was very on point.
Yeah. So for me to wrap up this particular movie, so we don't spend hours and hours just on each movie, I have this B tier, and
Such a hater.
Yeah. The reason I have this as B tier is because I've talked about this quite a bit on what my shows and why I like them. I love character-driven stories. I love what's going on in these stories. And the problem that I have with Iron Man is that there's not a lot of character exploration in his transition between hey, I'm a playboy party boy to being the man who will don the suit of Iron Man because I'm going to shut my company down because I'm tired of making weapons for the wrong people. It literally is a sudden switch, and that character moment isn't really explored. There's some drama with Yusuf, if I remember right, what was his name. There's some drama there. There's some good points. There's some highlights. But my problem here is this: Tony Stark's transition doesn't really sell for me. Obadiah Stane is suddenly like the bad guy, and it's just one of these like a lot of these character motivations were still cliche for the time.
For sure.
And I'm just like, look, it could have been done better. And I'm not saying that this is a bad movie at all, right? B tier is not an insult for me. That means you're above average, you're good.
Well, and some of those criticisms you had, I think, manifest in Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3 later on. Like, some of the character issues that you've just highlighted, like, we keep giving Tony conflict, and that conflict doesn't seem to make a lot of sense in the broader, what he's doing in the broader universe. It's like, oh, we've got to create conflict in the next 2 films, so we're going to force the issue. And he's more or less just regurgitating all the same stuff. And of course, I think that this becomes a huge problem at the very end. So in the Endgame, I have issues with what they do with Tony at the end, right? And again, I think it's because they're trying to force something that is not organic and natural for what Tony should be doing at that stage of his life.
I agree. So anyway, before we get to there, can we wrap up Iron Man 1?
Yes.
All right. So I'm at B tier. He's at S tier, and he said largely for nostalgia region, and that's fine. I respect the nostalgia. Just admit it when you got it.
It's my list. I can do whatever I want.
Yes, you can. All right. So the next one, released in June 13th of 2008, we have the Incredible Hulk. And this was one of the ones that I won't talk a lot about. I don't remember this movie very well. And it's also that I didn't have any major connection with this movie, hardly at all. I remember the 2003 Hulk movie better than this one.
Right, so this is the Edward Norton one, right? Where, so, we start off the Hulk story already in the middle of it, so it's not his origin story.
Right.
But even though it's not an origin story, he's not... He's not doing something. He's just dealing with what he was dealing with in the origin story, right?
Yeah.
So this was one of the big weaknesses of this film. I actually loved Edward Norton. I just generally, as both an actor and as a person. I just rewatched Fight Club a couple weeks ago. How can you not love him? American History X. There's just so many things I love about him, and so I really enjoyed this movie. But I agree. It sort of felt like it was in that same tier as X-Men, right? It's okay, Hulk, big, smash stuff. Edward Norton's trying to create some drama in the middle of this, and it wasn't, I didn't think it was working very well.
So, for me, I'm actually going to, fast forward to me wrapping up, because I just don't have a lot to add here. Edward Norton just doesn't sell me as Bruce Banner at all. I'll definitely have to compare him to Mark Ruffalo later on, but it's just, that's one casting choice I'm really glad they did, that they redid for Avengers. And, for me, I don't know what it was, but I think actually not having the origin story, I get it. It was 5 years after, the original Hulk movie. The origin story had just been made. You didn't want to go into burnout, but it didn't work for me at all. And I'd literally put this movie actually in D tier. The only reason this movie is watchable for me is that they put a lot of effects into it. Abomination looks great. Hulk looks okay. What is it? The sound machines that the Stark Company has, were kind of cool. But just in a general level, it just didn't work for me. It really didn't.
Hulk. I'll say this: Hulk is a tricky character because when he's in Hulk mode, when he's the most interesting, there is he's just unbridled rage, right? I mean, that's what he's supposed to be. Is just unbridled rage, and as a consequence, it's real hard to make him the center of a story, and I think that's why they've never tried since. And I wouldn't recommend that they try to do that. Some of his storylines in the comic books, he goes to cool places, some interesting things happen. They try to incorporate that into other films like Ragnarok, and I thought that was good.
I can't
wait.
But
yeah, just having him as a centerpiece for a film, when you think about story arcs in film form, it's not going to be a good 2 hours if Hulk's your main piece. So
I agree. So for me, D tier, where are you at?
Oh yeah, so I put him. I'll share this at the end, but yeah, C tier. I got him C tier. So that's also where I have Endgame, by the way. So just.
Ooh, hot
just
take.
so people know. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't worry. I'm actually gonna outdo you on that.
My D tier, just a little pre-vista, a little early look.
It is D tier.
May or may not have the name Captain, and then a word that rhymes with Marvel. After that's because anyway, that movie was terrible. Okay, continue.
All right, released in 2010. Yeah, April. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, not 2010. Did I skip one? Hold on a second here. Oh yeah, I did skip one. I apologize for that. It's Iron Man 2 in 2010. I don't know why my thing wasn't working there, but it wasn't, so my bad. Anyway, yeah, released in 2010, April 28th, or May 7th, sorry, is Iron Man 2, Return of Tony Stark. No, I'm kidding. But no, we have Tony Stark is back. We have Whiplash as the main antagonist. We have Rhodey donning the suit of War Machine. What do you think?
When it's Don Cheadle instead of what's his name before? I can't remember who the actor was in.
I can't remember either, but I think Don Cheadle was actually a correct recasting of that.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I think that might have been a contract dispute, but yeah, no, I totally agree. I love Don Cheadle. I think he's the bomb. I've got this as a B tier. So this gets back to sort of this problem. So what do you do with Tony? He already had this come to Jesus stuff in Iron Man 1. In Iron Man 2, they do some cool things. They continue to try to force the issue on Tony. But he's dealing with that's the one where he has to fix his arc reactor, and his dad made the map of a city that turned out to be the same schematic as an atom of a new thing. And there are some cute and cool things to that. So that's why I'll B tier this one. But on the whole, I didn't feel like... I felt like Iron Man 1 did awesome. We now have this Phase 1 concept. We're going to start incorporating all these characters. Tony's still our guy because he kicked this whole thing off. So he's got to be next. Everybody went and saw it. There were some cool special effects. There were some interesting things that happened. But overall, Tony is who he is. Like, he's already a developed character at this point. There's not a lot else going on. So, that weakens him. Weakens it a lot.
Shout out to the chat for Terrence Howard. It was the original guy. Yeah. He didn't sell me as being Rhodes that well, to be honest. But getting into my thoughts on Iron Man 2, I was really unimpressed with this movie because it kind of tried to do the same story arc in a nutshell for Tony as Iron Man 1. Is that, hey, I'm an asshole, I've got some problems. Like, they literally just kind of hit the reset button on his character, and that did not go well over for me at all. And it basically this. If Iron Man 1 hadn't existed and it was Iron Man 2, this would be a C-tier movie for me. But the fact that it's basically Iron Man 1 rehashed in a completely different way, it just automatically gets dropped into D tier for me. The character journey... The character journey is almost the exact same, and they don't sell me on this hardly any more than they do in the original one. There's some good moments there with, like the scene at the end of the schematic with his dad, you were my greatest creation. It tries, but it just fails for me. It really doesn't. It really doesn't sell me at all, as far as these character motivations.
Well, and again, it gets back to in Iron Man 1, and this will be a common theme throughout because everybody's getting so many movies. At least the main characters. Like, we'll get to Captain America here in just a second, but. Yep. You have this problem where you sort of need to have an entire hero's journey in a standalone film, even though we have a serial series, right? And so so I want to cut people slack. That's why I probably rank this one slightly higher than you, is because you have to make $500 million on this one film, and so you have to have a complete hero's journey, right? So anyway, we could talk about the elements of the hero's journey if you wanted, but he goes all the way around the hero's journey in 3 separate movies, and it's going to be the exact same hero's journey every single time, and that's a weakness. I didn't see this. I feel like they got better about that problem once they realized this is going to sell. We don't have to, have an entire hero's journey in each episode.
Yes.
And so this gets better over time, but this is a weakness in this Tony arc.
Absolutely, and jumping a little bit of ahead, I absolutely agree with that, and that was what I was going to say, particularly when it comes to Iron Man 3, is that this wash repeat cycle, just because you made it go that kind of route, doesn't work very well. And like I'm gonna skip ahead and just say this, like Thor: The Dark World has this problem to a large degree, but then you have somebody with Taika Waititi, doing Ragnarok, and they completely change the gambit, and it works very, very well. So we'll definitely get there.
And it's interesting. I want your opinion on this as we work through those. If this was a high-level decision, or if this was local decisions made on the individual films. Meaning, did they just get directors that understood this better, or did they understand what was actually working well at a high level? I don't know the answer to that, but they did a lot better.
I don't know the answer to that either, but I'll just simply state that something in Marvel or Disney or whoever did change, where they stopped looking at heroes' journeys in a nutshell and started definitely looking at each individual movie as part of a greater whole.
Yeah.
And I'll like Ragnarok is one of my favorite movies. I'm going to talk about that like extensively. So I'm going to just close out Iron Man 2 here. I'm like, yep, for me it's D tier. It's more used as plot setup for Avengers. Because you have Black Widow in there. You have a lot of the people that are kind of showing up as part of the outline. And again, we lose another villain, and he's not really memorable. Whiplash, otherwise played by Mickey Rourke, is just not a character I really care about. And it's like you gotta make me care about this movie, and this movie just doesn't really make me care at all. I don't think I've went back to rewatch this movie for 5 years.
What guys did you care about in all of Marvel?
We'll get there. We will get there. We will. All right. We'll absolutely get there. All right. So for me, closing out, Iron Man 2 D tier. I don't want to get ahead of myself too much. He's got it in B tier, which is fine.
Yep.
So moving along, is that next we have the premiere of one of our newer heroes. It is May 6th of 2011 here in the United States, and we have the wonderful Chris Hemsworth playing as Thor, the God of Thunder. This movie is a little all over the place for me. Do you want to start this off, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I enjoyed it a ton in theaters. I thought that, like, visually, like, there was a lot of fun things about it. Its rewatchability is almost zero. Right? Like, that's how I feel about this one. It's one of those, like, oh, the original Thor is, if you're flipping channels, you hit the original Thor movie, you are not stopping for that, because you're kind of going through the motions for his character setup, right? And the visuals were cool. Getting introduced to Asgard was cool. Like, there was a lot of coolness to it, but, like, actually what happens, completely not interesting. I don't think it's rewatchable at all. In my particular way that I scored this one, I put it also as a B tier. My B tier is enormous. So I give it, again, I tip the hat because I thought that Asgard was super cool to get introduced to. We get Loki out of this, which I think he was the most interesting person in that particular film. And of course, he ends up taking off and being more interesting and more integral throughout. And it's because I think that Hiddleston did an excellent job coming out of Thor. He was a bright spot amongst a bunch of blah, right? And so I give it a B tier thing, but you're going to see that I did not like Dark World at all. So there you go.
So there's interesting parts where we line up and where we disagree here. This one's going to be a hot take for some people. This is A tier for me. Yes, really. A lot of people
do you watch movies? Like, wait, what just happened?
No, for real. A lot of people are sitting here going like, "Oh, I didn't like Thor," and all this stuff. And I'm like, for me, I'm just like, why? Because this movie actually does it better at doing a hero's arc and a character journey for me than a lot of the other original ones by far. Tom Hiddleston plays Thor. He's a war-craved, angsty teenager. I totally get that character. You don't like him.
It's you saw yourself.
What? Get out of here.
So this is your story. That's why you have to privilege your story. I get that. I respect that.
I don't know about that. But anyway, this is my thing, right? It's what I see in this character. Excuse me, you got me flustered here. Anyway, what I see in this character is that he's an angsty teenager. Even though he's supposed to be like 900 years old, which is annoying. But he's hot-tempered, impatient, basically a spoiled brat, right? And he actually does go through the character journey, and every part along the way is sold for me, right? You have him getting cast out. You have him basically having to learn the manners of other place. I love the whole like smashing the cup, another thing. And he has to adopt something else in being mortal. And even when he is even without his powers, he's willing to take on a fight. That's the fight scene in when he's trying to go after the hammer, and he actually wins anyway against this dude, right? Yeah, a 900-old teenager from chat. Anyway, to where I'm going with this is that he does have a hero's journey. He does have a major character arc, and it sells for me. There's each an individual moment where he kind of becomes more adapted, more understanding, and more mature as a character, and I really like that. You also have quite a bit of exploration in Loki's character as well, that he realizes that he's adopted. He's the trickster, and you kind of see a lot of what's going on in that character, and I'm going to hyper over this real quick. But in a general nutshell, is that Loki is also a character, a believable character. He's going through trauma, he's going through experiences, and everything for me, as far as the major two players in this cast, is sold for me. Odin is believable. The what is it? The foursome four or whatever. The extra side characters aren't much of anything, but no, for me this is actually A tier. Yeah, it's a little campy. It's a little, it doesn't look as good as Iron Man in my opinion, but as far as the actual character development and the story and the plot, I think it's actually better. Is that it sells me this character.
Like I said, this hits too close to home for you, so I will not criticize this film.
Whatever.
It's B tier for me. It's a great story of Ty's life. He falls from grace, has to pick himself up by his britches, win the day, get Natalie Portman. I mean, who can't love this movie, right? I mean, come on.
I'll let the audience decide on if Nate is correct on that. Leave your comments in chat or down below in the YouTube comments. I'll appreciate it. Let me know if Nate's right. Am I the spoiled brat? We'll find out.
I will say, I just want to highlight your Loki thing, is that for the first time we have a true villain who has enough mixed motive that it becomes interesting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So this, and you're exactly right to sort of highlight this. I do think, by the way, that, and this isn't our conversation, but inside of the Loki TV series, in some ways, they kind of broke that a little bit, in my opinion. But that's okay. But Loki was great, especially at this time, because he was a mixed bag. You never knew when he was a good guy or a bad guy. His motivations were very mixed, and you kind of understood why. So, and I thought that was excellent. I thought it was the highlight of the film.
It is. Chat's being ridiculous. I don't know if you're looking at chat at all.
I'm sure chat just feels the same way I do about this. I just assume that's the case. I haven't read any of
Quote,
it.
begging Natalie Portman is 100% A tier movie.
Absolutely. That might look just that on its face might be S tier level, right? If we're just being totally honest about it. But I get it. This is Ty. This is his life. I get it. So it's cool.
I'll simply suffice this. I didn't care for Natalie Portman's character. Was it Jane Foster? Like the romance there between her and Thor absolutely doesn't sell for me at all. It's actually the only reason I probably wouldn't put this in S tier, is actually because of that. But on a general level here, I will at least confess that Natalie Portman is absolutely my type. Is absolutely my type. But anyway,
I think every male on the planet goes, oh yeah, she's like super wife material. She may not be S tier of like, just total raw sexuality, but you're like, oh my gosh, she's like, this is what everybody would want, right? So yeah,
right.
I get that.
Okay, yeah. The chat, I gotta thank you, Rabbit Wombat AB. Thank you so much for this. Kat Dennings and Stellan Skarsgård provided depth from supporting characters side absent from any other movies. Yes, those two characters are really good. Or one of them's was it Ludwig, whatever his name is. Those two characters are good. It's actually Portman's character that isn't that good. And she's supposed to be the love interest.
Yeah, and the entire, again, this is a good point. I thought that Thor himself was pretty flat, and I thought that Natalie Portman was pretty flat. But I thought that the entire world and everything that was built around it was actually very rich and very cool. And so they bring some of those side characters back for Avengers and things like that because of how good that was. So it's almost like if you're... you have the sixth man of the year, right? Like your bench is better than your starters on this one to a degree.
Yeah.
And so your two outstanding stars are not carrying the load, right? It's your third place person, Loki, and it's your bench. They're the ones who are carrying it, and that's not good. It's not good.
I don't 100% agree with that. I think Hemsworth actually does quite a bit better than a lot of people give him credit for. Whatever, we don't agree. That's fine.
But yeah,
But anyway, to wrap it up for me, the one last note that I want to make is that it looks like they killed Loki, but they don't. And that is a wonderful decision. I am tired of these movies killing off the villains, never to be seen again, which they could be used better elsewhere. And there's going to be one we eventually get onto where I am going to throw an absolute shit fit that character was killed. But we're not there yet. So, end of Thor, 2000, basically, it was supposed to be the Mighty Thor, but anyway, 2011. We're getting to close out on, but for me, it is A tier. Old boys here is at B tier. So I think we can close this one out and move over to Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yeah, how did I rank this one? Let me take a look.
All right, it is July 22nd of 2011, and we have one more summer action blockbuster. It is Captain America: The First Avenger. Chris Hemsworth being cast as the Star-Spangled Man. Quite interesting. I was really not excited for this after seeing him in Fantastic Four. But then I see this movie, and it's a knockout. I really was going into this movie expecting to hate it. And then I come out of it, I'm like, it's not bad. The only real problem that I do have with this movie is the historical revisionism, with Hydra. And that's part of the comics. And for me, it's just like Hydra's not really believable. There's parts where I really like the story, but there's parts where it's just like, look, don't mess with history too damn much. They could have made Hydra a little bit more grounded, less comic-y, and more realistic.
That was me. That point is the part. I'm actually, I want to give a lot of liberties inside of a creative space, inside of films, to tell good stories. That was, to me, the part, they felt too cartoonish.
Yes,
right?
They
felt way too cartoonish. And this is something, by the way, that gets fixed, I think, in later Captain America movies.
I don't disagree with that.
Right, and so, but in this particular film, I agree that the bad guys were way too cartoonish. You've got Elrond / Agent Smith, and he made him into a cartoon, and that was very disappointing, and that made me sad.
Yeah. Red Skull, cartoony as hell. Armin, what is it? Armin Shimon, whoever the no, sorry, wrong character. He'll eventually be the computer dude at one point. He's very face forward. This movie is just honestly not that good. He did.
I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
The good part about this movie is the starting out of Sebastian Stan. Unfortunately, they don't do a lot for his character, but it also it sells me very well on Chris Evans as Captain America.
Totally agree.
That's the highlight of the movie, but a lot of the other stuff is either just so superficial, like Hydra is what they should have done with Hydra, and this is a criticism, and I'm sorry for doing this, Disney and Marvel, but you shouldn't have made them as cartoony, and you should have made them more like an extra version of the Waffen SS, where they had just normal guns and normal things for the era, but they are like they're just the super baddies of the time, and you need special forces to take them down, and that would have been great. It's over the top in the wrong way, and it doesn't sell for me in a lot of regards.
Yeah, and there's just problems too with giving cartoonish bad guys that level of tech to fight not that level of tech.
Yeah.
Like it's tough. It's just tough.
Yep.
So anyways, it's a B tier for me. Again, my B tier has like 10 movies in it.
Yeah, that's
so it's
good.
a B tier. Like you gotta just get through it, right? You kind of know that it's there. You gotta get through it. There's some wrong go America moments, which the nationalistic part of me enjoys, but otherwise, yeah, it's just a B movie.
Star Spangled Man with a Plan gets a B tier for me. In some ways, this movie almost wants to be C tier with Hydra, but in the character development of Captain America, in the regards of just being who he is, which he actually doesn't go through a lot of character development nearly as much as he goes through
a physical development.
Yeah, well, not just that, but he does have to reflect quite a bit on now that he's gone from little guy to big guy. Does he change? And he doesn't really do that at all, and that's a wonderful thing. And so, at least for me, putting him in a nutshell is that could you have done that a little bit more? You could have tested him and tried him, yes. But as a general level, that's not his character to begin with. And so, overall, this the character for me is trying to be A tier because I just really thought that this movie wasn't going to be that good at all. And it thoroughly impressed me. And maybe there's a little bit of nostalgia with this movie in the regards for me that puts it in a B tier because of the fact that even though Captain America doesn't have much of a character arc, he's a character out of the gate that you do root for, that you do like, and that you do want to see win. And especially with the death of Sebastian Stan, which, spoilers, is not quite a thing, you really, you empathize with him because he's actually had to pay a price. And even with the movies that will come later, is that price is still paid. It's not watered down by the Winter Soldier.
Which, by the way, okay, so again, a slight defense to Disney. They finally figured out we are so successful, it is okay that most of the character conflict that's going to happen with Captain America does not happen in one standalone film. Yeah. And they actually had a plan for everybody. And that is obvious to me. And so that's got to be a high-level decision, and it makes the other Captain America movies so much better than the first one.
True! I'm definitely agreeing with this. All right, so to wrap this up for me, B tier for both of us. I think we're pretty good. And we're ending up Phase 1 in the summer of 2012, May 4th, with the Avengers.
So fun! I just remember going to this movie and thinking, this movie was so fun. It was so playful. It was so, it is exactly what the late 90s, you're probably too young for this, Ty, but back when there was the summer blockbuster, it started with, for me, it was Independence Day, yep. And then Wild Wild West with Will Smith.
Yep,
and,
I remember this.
Yeah, it's just, you just go, it's just unbridled fun, you kind of leave your brain at home type deal, right? And, I just loved it. And I appreciated that they brought Loki in as the bad guy because, again, he's got all these mixed things. He was sort of a fun punching bag in this one. I actually thought he was a little... I never was convinced he was actually a threat. That's the only downside to this one, right? That, to me, it's the only thing that kind of drags it down. But I just had so much fun. And so I saw it a second time in theaters just because I was like, this is just so fun. It's just such a fun movie. And it was a great summer blockbuster. I really enjoyed it. I liked the interplay between, like, you're getting the Avengers together, and there's like these super funny moments, and so you've got Captain America and Iron Man and Thor having these moments, and they're like teaming them up in these different scenarios, trying to figure things out, and it was just a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun. I think. Let's see how I rank this one. I'm sure I gave this A. Yeah, this was A tier for me. And it was just I just really enjoyed the whole thing. It brought the team together, made sense. A little vanilla in some ways. Like I said, Loki never actually convinced me that he was ever going to win, but that's okay.
Yep.
Like, it was fun. It was just such a fun film. I loved it.
So there's parts of this I agree with you with, and there's a part I want to separate myself with. Loki is the reason for me that this is not S tier. This is A tier for me, absolutely, and it's actually Loki coming back and not being that believable as a villain that bothers me. At first, I like him quite a bit. The ripping the eye out scene was really like not what I was expecting. Having Clint Barton switch sides with mind control. The opening part of the movie, Act 1, and to some degree Act 2, really does make me think, all right, Loki's actually way more serious than I thought he was going to be. And, of course, we find out later that the Tesseract's going to be an Infinity Stone. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that at the time. But anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, as far as all that is concerned, at least, for me, is that Loki almost hits it, but at the end he falters and he's not super believable. And when he becomes Hulk's punching bag, it's funny, but it ruins him as a character because to be a villain, to bring the Avengers together, you've got to be a boss. And he just...
Right, and he was not.
Yeah, he's not. So, but... The highlight reel of this is the Avengers cast and the plot that brings them all together. Is that part of it's the search for the MacGuffin, if you will, which is the Tesseract, but it's done really well. You have all the characters that play this have at least some major character moment that I fully enjoy. And it's not even just the main characters. You get into the supporting cast to some degree with Nick Fury, Colby Smulders. Character, which I don't know if he ever even named her, but
yeah, I don't know.
As far as that, like every character has a moment to shine. Every character has quite a lot going on, and it's beautiful in the regard that we have Black Widow, totally believable character. She's serious. She's a lot more than the eye candy that she is in Iron Man 2. Clint Barton playing Jeremy Renner. Hawkeye is somebody that you like. His character story more is in, Avengers 2, which we'll get to, but he's, got quite a bit going on. And of course he's mind controlled. So he's kind of put in a box where he's limited, but he's limited in a good way. That, you're like, hey, who is this character? What can he do? And you see what he can do, but you don't know why he's doing it because he's mind controlled. So it's a great sideline effect. Fantastic story writing on that regard. Iron Man, totally believable character, particularly how he squares off against Thor and Captain America at various times. Thor is probably the weakest of the core crew, just in the regard that...
He's inherently a weak character. I agree. Okay, keep going.
Ouch. But yeah, unironically, a little bit true.
I forgot. He's you. I gotta take that back.
Shut up!
He's the best. He's the best guy in the whole series. My bad.
No. No, I actually agree with this. Is that Thor is the weakest character at this point, and he will remain that way for quite a while. And he is.
Well, he gets a haircut, right?
Huh? Unironically, yes. But we'll get to that. At least for me, the problem with his character is that he's got quite a bit going on here because the antagonist is Loki, so that's working out very well because it's basically, kind of a redux of Thor 1 in a good way. You've got, he's largely comic relief, but it works because he's kind of a fish out of water, and it's sold in a pretty decent way. Bruce Banner has been recast as Mark Ruffalo, and he's totally a believable Hulk. It works for me very, very well, and I love this because a lot of the character moments is reflected in him and the fact that he could change at any moment, kill everybody, and it's awesome, and it's great. And then you have Chris Hemsworth as Captain America. Captain America's, kind of struggling with his new identity being in, basically 70 years at a time. And he's kind of old-fashioned and new-fashioned all at the same time, and it's an interesting exploration in the regards of the old school versus the new school. And they talk about that quite a bit in the movie. Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, totally believable.
That was great.
Absolutely fantastic. And so the characters all knock it out of the park. And this movie is so close to S tier, so close to S tier for me, because it almost hits it. It's literally low key towards the end of it. That kind of just drops it for me. Is that I would almost give it an honorary S tier just because of the fact that you have so much going on with so many characters, and it's still amazing. It's still great. So yeah, they knocked it out of the park with this movie.
Now, quick question: do you think, just because of how important this becomes? So of course I A-tiered this movie. I thought it was fantastic. It's great, just super fun, very rewatchable. It's a lot of it's good. This becomes the moment that creates all of Tony Stark's future character arc issues, right?
Yes,
is this moment in New York? He feels like they're getting their butts kicked. A bunch of chaos and damage and death is happening to his city, and then he thinks he has sacrificed himself to sort of detonate the nuke, and he's falling back down through the portal, and this like totally changes him. So I even though this isn't technically part of this film, do you think that was done correctly and was a big enough reset of his character? Because this becomes like a huge part of his motivation moving throughout all the films he's in, right? Is it enough for you?
It's not enough in this one. I don't think this is the reset for his character. This is the end of the old character that he will be. And it wraps up really nicely in a nice little bow for me, but he's not the character that we're about to experience later on in the MCU. And particularly the reason why is the next movie that we're going to hit here real quickly is Iron Man 3. And for me, this is his shining, if you will, literally he has phases of his character. And this is the highlight of this phase, but it's not this movie that actually transitions him into the next phase, which is so much more believable and so much of a better character. I'll get there. And I'm pretty sure you can already figure out where I'm going with this now. But
yeah. Okay. All right, well, good. All right, well, so talk to us about Iron Man 3.
All right, so Iron Man 3, just closing out on the original Avengers is that, for me, A tier for him as well. Fantastic movie. I could do a whole review on this movie just by itself, and we might actually do that at one point. So I'd love to have you back for that.
That's his pinnacle. I think he's just slowly fallen from grace ever since.
Who?
I digress. Huh?
Who?
Joss Whedon, the director,
oh.
the writer. Yeah, it's poor Joss. I mean, since that time, like, I'm super interested. Like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he does all these like smaller. The blog. What was that? Doctor. It's the one with. Gosh, I can't remember any names. Captain Hammer. They do like the. It's like a web series musical thing. Anyway, all this really great creative stuff gets to Avengers. And I swear, it's just ruined him somehow. Then he became like the sexual harassing maniac, and he messed up Justice League, and like and it's just been terrible. I just feel for the guy because he was so brilliant.
Yeah.
Dr. Horrible sing-along blog. That's what it is.
Anyway, just to wrap up Josh Whedon real quick, this is his climax, unfortunately, and I don't think it's on him. I really don't. I think he got screwed with the movie that we'll be talking about later. With decisions behind the scenes, and I really can't wait to rip into that. But it's definitely, just remind me when we get to that movie to talk about that. So, It is now May 3rd of 2013, and it's the start of Phase 2. It's Iron Man 3. And I'm going to be a little generous to this movie, because it kind of gets into what Nate was talking about the character reset, but it doesn't do it in the way that I want it to do it. In the regards of, Tony Stark comes into this and he's suffering from PTSD after the Battle of New York. The problem is that it doesn't really sell me on the why. We don't see any of the other major characters seemingly having a problem from this, and it doesn't really sell me on the fact that what is really bothering him that makes him so scared. He doesn't fixate on was it the nuke, was it this, was it that. It really doesn't sell me on that. However, what it does sell me on is the kind of the journey that he's going on. He's been hit with the reset button yet again, and he's going on the hero's journey yet again, but it's better by far than Iron Man 2, because even though I don't care for the antagonist, Fake Mandarin, I don't care for quite a lot of what's going on as far as the outer line, Tony's character is explored a little bit better. It's not as actionable as it maybe could have been, but that's actually fine. They had character moments with him and the kid, with him actually having to figure out how to work without the suit. It's actually quite a bit better than Iron Man 2. This movie for me is C tier. It's not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, and they could have done a lot better with it. But at least they try, and to some degree they even succeed quite a bit more than Iron Man 2 does. So at least for me, yeah. C tier, not bad, not good. It's average. Could have been a lot better. Could have been a lot worse. So what do you got?
So, when I saw Ben Kingsley was going to be the bad guy, and I saw that it was going to be, I can't remember what his name is. I was just trying to look this up.
The Mandarin?
Yeah, the Mandarin. I was excited about that as a proposition.
Yeah.
And then they do that whole flipperoo, and it turns out to be Guy Pearce, and he sucked, and it was
bad.
Disappointing.
That was bad.
And then, which is too bad, because again, Guy Pearce has really cool moments. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen Memento. The movie's phenomenal. It's like total brain bender. Like, he's cool. He's in a bunch of other movies that I like as supporting guy. He's really cool. There's a film called Traitor with him and Don Cheadle. Just like incredible. I love that film so much. When you come to Omaha, I might make you watch that with me because it's great. It's good, like Middle East, turning traitor on the Muslim, on Muslim extremism. Just incredible. Anyway, I digress. But I like these people. I like these actors. There's the switch.
And it's fucked.
And it was dumb, and it didn't work. And the same problem. I don't feel like Iron Man was ever really in danger. They're trying to tell me like, oh, he's got to learn how to do this stuff on his own, and I'm like, I don't believe any of this. And then he uses like 1,000,000 of his own suits to like fight stuff at the end. But I guess Potts gets her own suit or something at the end of this one, right? So
she gets superpowers, and she can use the suit a little bit.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I mean, like it has its place in the universe, and it's C tier. Totally same thing. I see this on TV, I'm flipping the channel. I'm not staying there. Like you got to check off a couple of things in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I see what they're doing. You kind of have to get through it. But again, Tony Stark is a difficult. He ends up being really good as a side character in other films, but when he's the main guy, anyway, I don't know.
Okay, I don't disagree with that. Or I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. In regards to the side character, and we're about to hit that towards the end of this phase about Tony Stark. But what we'll definitely get into is the fact of I do like this in that the antagonists are actually believable as like hard punching. Like Iron Man is struggling to defeat them, and that's actually one of the highlights for this movie. Is that literally Iron Man can't literally just punch his way through. He has to fight and get down and gritty to actually beat any of the extremist characters. Pepper Potts isn't that great. Basically, what I can put this in a nutshell is this movie does try, to a large degree. It does try. It tries. It just doesn't succeed. And the problem that I have with this, in a nutshell, is literally there was more hype for what the movie could have been from the trailer than what happened.
Sure. Yeah.
Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin? Hell fucking yes. I was super stoked.
I mean, it was one of those like, oh, I saw the trailer and I was like, oh, this is going to be sweet. And then I went to the movie and I was like, I would never think about this movie ever again.
It was pretty bad. It was a letdown. And the problem is they literally set the bar too high for themselves, and that's unfortunate. But what are you gonna do?
It gets back to this problem. Like we've gotta make Tony dynamic and interesting because he is so popular.
Yeah.
He has become in real life, in the actual world, he's become the standard bearer for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Robert Downey Jr. as a person had overcome so much and is frankly a phenomenal actor. And, he dominates when he's doing interviews. Like, I don't know if you saw him with Joe Rogan last year or 2 years ago now. I mean, he's just an incredibly dynamic, interesting person. It doesn't, and he has his own real life hero's arc, right? Where he's doing good, he has a great fall, he comes on back. Like, it's just incredible. So in real life, he's the standard bearer. Inside the actual universe, they're like, oh crap, how do we make him the standard bearer? Like, how can, we got to make real life and fake life match. And yeah, it got weird, man. It got real weird in Iron Man 3. I just don't know what else to say except it got real weird. Like, go storyboard Iron Man 3 and you just go like, wait, why would you, like, what? Like, who does this? Like, an 8th grader would be like, I'm not sure these are good ideas. Like, sometimes I feel like the Hollywood folks need an 8th grader. So I'm talking like a 12, 13-year-old boy to just be like, what are you guys doing? Like, they just need that. I feel the same way about NFL teams. They need the 14-year-old kid who plays Madden all the time to help them figure out when to call timeout. Because adults make these stupid decisions. Anyway. That's a whole other thing.
I don't necessarily agree with that. Sometimes I feel like they're running the storyboard with a bunch of 8th graders. Ooh, this would be so cool. We're gonna bring all the suits in. Like for me, that's actually the exact opposite. I would go with that. But.
Okay, so this is one of the, and we're going to see this more and more. So after Avengers, we've been introduced to X number of characters, and they're all kind of gelling, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But now we are adding, and adding, and adding, right? And now what do you do? Because there's the real life part of this, which is you got to sell toys. We're going to have all these spin-off films. We're going to get to the time we get to Infinity War and Endgame, and you're like, good night. Like, this is absurd. Like, what's going on right now is just absurd. Like, stop it. Literally, the directors of Endgame said, let's just randomly put 2 characters together and have them go on quests. And I'm like, gosh, dang it.
I'm not there yet. We're not there yet. We're at 55 minutes, but we're only in phase 2, so we can start. Yeah. Anyway.
C tier.
Iron
Man 3 C tier.
Iron Man 3 C tier. Let's kill it. Moving on. Thor: The Dark World released in our first fall release, November 8 of 2013. And this movie is fucking D tier. Fuck this movie. God damn it.
Yeah, this movie is terrible. I cannot think of one redeeming quality. I take it back.
Loki.
The very opening, when it's just like cartoons talking about the history of the elves, literally the best part of the film. That was its zenith. And then as soon as the actual people showed up on screen, it just eroded, and then died in a ditch, and it's terrible. And I'm sorry about that. So it's the same thing, C tier. Only Captain Marvel gets D tier status for me.
You have no F tiers? God damn.
Well, no, I guess that might be the problem. This one should be D tier, and Captain Marvel should be F-tier. Not in the universe.
Fair enough.
It's a disaster.
We'll get there here in a minute.
Moving along.
Yeah, we'll get there here in a minute, but at least for me, yeah, this movie is D tier, and the only highlight this movie has for me is Loki. Loki is the only thing that keeps me engaged throughout the entire movie at all. And it literally, I literally said this. This movie is not Thor's movie, it's Loki's movie. And I think a lot of people, even during the reviews, had talked about that during that movie.
My wife literally fell asleep during this film. I took her to this movie. We're sitting in there. She fell asleep. She's like, nothing is happening. This movie sucks. And she fell asleep. It's a Marvel film. Like, that shouldn't be acoustically possible.
The last note I'll put of this is that the Reality Stone, the Ether, is incredibly underused. And it's basically just used as a semi-MacGuffin, and Jane Foster is even worse. So, alright, cool. Good luck. Thank you very much. Fuck off with this movie. D tier. Alright, we're gonna start cracking on with something a lot better. It is April 4th of 2014, and it's Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Yeah, pretty much. Congratulations. Welcome to the first S-tier movie.
Yeah, it's real good, man. It's real good.
It has major political and social themes. It has character moments. Major character moments regarding...
It's Robert freaking Redford. Right? I'm thinking of the right movie, right? That he wasn't in Civil War. Yeah, it's Robert freaking Redford as a bad guy, and you love him the entire movie until he's the bad guy, and you're just like, gosh, dang it. This is incredible.
You're talking about Crossbones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Crossbones is good, even though you don't know who he is yet. But yeah, that character is fantastic and a great antagonist. You have Captain America's character, not stand out of the park. And his character dilemmas, particularly in the fact that his best friend has returned. Totally believable. Bucky Barnes is kind of a force of nature, and the only problem I have with that is the fact that he is. But you understand that he's brain controlled or mind washed or what have you. So, it, again, gives him something to do, puts him in a box, but in a believable way that doesn't make me go, okay, this character sucks.
This is a dilemma. Instead of Captain America having to go through growth himself, he's put into a position of a dilemma. And what do you do when you're in a dilemma?
Yes.
Sometimes, because like the growth isn't going to happen in this movie, right? The growth of this rolling dilemma is going to unroll itself into the future films. And this one was great. The thing that was so great about this one, I felt like it to me, it felt like like almost a Bourne movie, right? It was like a Bourne movie. It was gritty. It was edgy. I actually felt invested. I thought that people were going to get hurt, right? Et cetera, et cetera. I just thought a lot of really good things about it. I thought it was phenomenal.
I absolutely agree with that, and I could probably talk about this movie for its own episode by itself as well. But
yeah, and actually, again, it's one of those moments where Marvel gets it right where the surveillance state, stuff like this, like the Snowden stuff had just happened. I mean, it was just really well timed.
Knocked it out of the park. Knocked it out of the park in so much ways.
Yeah,
and
totally
it's,
great.
And it's one of those deals where like every character is doing something. You have Nick Fury, who has his basically his journey in the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D. You have Natasha Romanoff basically showing off her skills, her relationship with Cap. The antagonists are people that you know or that you can become acquaintances of from either movie 1 or movie 2 itself. Like, this movie just checks all of the boxes. This is a standout movie and probably one of my top 10 movies that I've ever watched. I don't know exactly where it rates, but it's probably, if it's not in the top 10, it's got to be around 12. Like, it's good. It is
super phenomenal. I agree. I don't know, man. There's some good movies out there.
There are some great movies in there, but anyway, we could probably.
Is it better than Black Hawk Down? I don't know.
Yes.
Dude, I like Black Hawk Down. What?
Yes, it's better than Black Hawk Down.
All
right. Anyway, we won't wrap too much on that.
It's not as good as The Godfather, obviously. Oh well. Anyway, we'll talk about this later. If you're one of these people who doesn't like The Godfather, I might have to just leave. You don't like The Godfather?
No, I don't like The Godfather. I'm sorry, Nate. Anyway, further.
I need a minute, guys. I need a minute. Hold on a minute. I just need a minute. I just need a minute.
I do need. In my All right, in my defense, I need to rewatch those movies, but I don't remember liking them too much. So anyway.
When you come to Omaha, you're getting no sleep because we have to reintroduce you to good movies.
All right,
this is clear.
Fair enough. All right.
Oh, see.
All right, fair enough. The next movie, it is August 1st of 2014, and we have one of the most out-of-the-box movies that we weren't expecting. It's Guardians of the Galaxy. And this movie, for me, is A tier.
A tier, no question.
It's
both of them. I thought both of them were A tier.
Oh, fuck. Get ahead of the game here. Was it James Gunn does a wonderful thing, introducing these characters, does it in a believable way. You get into the Power Stone. All these characters are characters that I immediately start liking almost off the top of the bat.
Pratt, man.
Yeah.
He's magic.
This movie does magic because it makes characters that people are like, do I really want to see this movie? And people are like, well, the trailer looks all right, and it is Marvel, and they're doing pretty good. And then everyone goes see it, and now they're a household thing. And by the way, this is the real start of bringing back like the 80s opera movies.
Right.
And James Gunn, and particularly later on Taika Waititi, thank you for bringing back wonderful music from the 80s and to some degree like the 70s.
The two Guardian movies are my wife's favorite by a lot. She feels like they're not really Marvel movies. Like, that's how good they are. She doesn't feel, and they are. They're sort of like off doing their own thing, right? There's not a ton of crossover.
Yeah.
And so, and she really enjoys them a lot. I've enjoyed them a ton. They're a great mix of playful, funny, interesting character development. They've got the whole package. They're really good. They are really good.
Yes, this movie is wonderful, and it does very good for itself. Establishes its own mini universe with the Guardians of the Galaxy. It'll eventually grow out and connect with the others. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but
it's forced. It's not great, but whatever.
Yeah, it is. And to wrap up Phase 2 at 1 hour and 3 minutes, we're going to be talking about Age of Ultron. All right, it is May 1st of 2015 to crack out. Did we miss one?
No. I'm just looking. I can't remember. I see on my little tier maker.
We didn't.
I think they left out.
No, we didn't. We're good.
On my tier maker, I think they left out one or two. Nope, there's Age of Ultron. I put it as a B tier. That was a mistake. That movie was not good. It should have been a C tier. That's okay. Continue.
Okay, fair enough. So the problem with this movie, and I'm gonna put it in. It's like straddling between B and C for me. And I'd probably have to put it in C tier. No, I'm gonna put it in B tier. There's some really good points in this movie.
I'm with you on this.
There's some really good points in this movie. The rise of Vision, Tony Stark's character reset. This is where his character is reset with Wanda fucking with his mind, and it's believable. I am shown and convinced that he's now having a schizophrenic attack, that he's losing his mind.
this is important. Scarlet Witch is awesome.
Yes.
She's a mutant. As soon as the mutants start to trickle in, things immediately start to get better because they're the best, most established characters. It's a travesty that the copyrights had been taken out and given to Fox and all this other mess. And so she, she's supposed to be like the daughter of Magneto, right? Yeah. So she's well developed. Her powers are pretty clear and straightforward. They use them to cool effect here. The fact that they had to break them from the mutant storyline was like weird, whatever. But it was phenomenal. I thought that was the highlight of that whole film. Like when she makes Hulk go crazy, right? Like,
yeah.
Isn't that? Yeah. So she makes Hulk go crazy. She's the outstanding part to this. Man, Ultron was not a fun bad guy.
True. Okay, so here's my problem. Here's my encapsulation. This movie's B tier, and it could have been A tier very well. Having Iron Man make Ultron instead of Ant-Man actually really works for me in this universe in a great way.
Yeah, because again, we've got the most important character in the MCU. He needs to be integral. He needs to make mistakes. He needs to reset. So like that makes sense.
Well, this movie doesn't reset the character for me. This movie does everything for Iron Man right, and literally, some of my criticisms of going forward with the MCU in certain movies is that they'll be focused on a particular character. This movie is more of Iron Man's movie. This is literally more or less Iron Man 4, but it's the best Iron Man movie.
Do I agree with this? Yeah, I guess that's fine. Is that why you had said this previously, where you were like, I don't know, because he's basically the main character of Age of Ultron? But is Age of Ultron still not a great movie? I guess that's my problem.
It's not a great movie, and the reason why is Ultron. I'm sorry. This is the part that lets me down. Ultron is actually a pretty cool villain. He's not a terrible character in it, even though he's a psychotic robot. It's a little too easy for that. Yeah. A lot of it is exploring Clinton Barton's character, which is okay, but it doesn't really add anything to the story, and they basically just kind of hoodwink you because they're trying to convince you he's going to die, and then, of course, it ends up being Quicksilver. Not a bad choice, but it could have hit a lot harder. They basically kind of screwed the pooch with a lot of the investment time, because it literally is just it's literally pull the wool out from under you kind of thing, where Clint's gonna die, Clint's gonna die, and investing in that, and then they don't do that, and then you're like, okay, cool, and now you care more for Clint, but it doesn't have the payoff at all. So at least for me, the highlight is Wanda Maximoff and Tony Stark exclusively in this. A little bit of Chris Evans, Steve Rogers here, particularly in the conflict that he's starting to build up, which will eventually lead to Civil War between, Iron Man, where they significantly disagree. But I would largely say that this is literally the Iron Man 4 movie. And it does pretty well, but it literally kind of has that Iron Man curse, unironically enough. Where it just doesn't knock it out of the park.
I do think that they finally made the right choice with him. Right, because they needed to do something. They need to make him interesting. They need to make his decisions and things matter. I don't know. It's tough, but yeah, most superhero movies, the bad guy determines whether or not it's a good movie or not. Right?
More or less. There's some times where it works. There's some times where it doesn't. But
okay, let's think it this way. What is? Okay, we'll do this at the end. Never mind. We'll talk about your favorites and things like that. We'll just continue to march through the films, and then we'll talk about, like, all right, so what is the best film that has a crappy bad guy? That's a question I want to ask you, but don't answer it now. We'll get to it later.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. So we have wrapped up Phase 2, which ironically enough only puts us halfway through this series, and we're at 1 hour and 8 minutes. So we're going to have to try to bust through some of these if we can, but unfortunately, this is the part where everything starts getting even better. And this is the start of Marvel's Phase 3 of the Infinity Saga, and it is now July 17th of 2015, right after the release of Age of Ultron. We had Ant-Man, and surprisingly enough,
a comedy.
It's a comedy. It's an action comedy.
It's amazing,
and it's great. It's A tier.
So enjoyable.
Everyone's sitting here like, you're literally watching the trailer, and it's just like, I'm Ant-Man, and you're just like, is this movie trying to take itself seriously? But it does, and it does so well. It makes a character that a lot of people thought wasn't going to be good, that wasn't going to work well, and it does, and it knocks it out of the park. There's not a lot bad here. Actually, no. The reason that this movie is not S tier is Yellow Jacket is boring as fuck.
I actually think this is one of the this is a candidate for a pretty good Marvel film that's bad guy is like totally irrelevant.
Yes.
Like literally irrelevant. And what's his name? Oh gosh, I feel like an idiot. He's in Parks and Recs and everything. What who's the actor for Ant-Man?
Paul Rudd.
Oh yeah, okay. So Rudd carries the show by himself. He has so much. His story itself already has so much conflict in it. He almost doesn't even need a bad guy, right? Like he's already going. Like he's set up as going through so much stuff while being hilarious that he has to just work through so many individual things anyway. He almost doesn't need a bad guy to have the conflict with. The conflict is with himself. He's trying to deal with parenting time. He's dealing with being a felon. He's dealing with trying to like get this new girl and like science and like there's just a lot going on. And he's got hilarious friends and it's just a lot of good things. So
Absolutely
nothing
agree.
bad to say about Batman.
All right, and then next, I don't want to skip over this. Paul Rudd knocks it out of the park. The original Hank Pym, in the original Ant-Man. Unfortunately, we don't get to see him in his action, but excuse me, we don't get to see him in action. But what the hell is his name? Give me just a second here. Michael Douglas as Hank Pym is fantastic.
No, I agree.
Evelyn Lilly is a great at her character, and I apologize, I can't remember off the top of my head. It sets up a lot, and it leaves some questions for later. Definitely with what will be the Wasp, and I can't remember what her name is, but we'll talk about that later. It sets up a lot. It gives you a lot more backstory to this one character. The character's great. Whether it's sheer charisma or the fact that you actually believe in him as a character is wonderful. It's funny. Yeah. It's got great fun. It's got great comedy. It's got great action. A tier for me. The only reason this is not S tier is the Yellow Jacket's a piece of shit. Other than that, it's great.
Yeah, and I do. I think this is a candidate for bad guy, still really good movie. This might be the one. But
I think this actually is the one, to be honest. But
yeah, we'll see when we get to the end.
Unironically, Ant-Man 2 kind of has the same problem going on, but not as bad.
Yeah, and I felt like the shtick was too much the same thing. We just like...
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll get there.
Next, I think we all know where this one's going to be. And yes, sorry 05 Kim, you did miss Winter Soldier, but this will be up on YouTube, so go check that out. And shout out to our friend Osiris in the chat as well. Next, we are doing, released on May 6th of 2016, breaking out the year, is Captain America Civil War.
Super fun. I like this movie a lot.
S tier. S tier. S tier. S tier.
You're fine. I mean, I get it. I get it because it's incredible. I liked Winter Soldier better, but this is incredible, and you're exactly right. This, I think, is the pinnacle of MCU storytelling, right? Because this is the crescendo. It sets up everything that makes sense as we move into Endgame and everything else. It's incredible.
This movie is fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. And actually, I like this more than Winter Soldier because there is no good guys and there is no bad guys, and you want to root for everybody, and you know there's hard decisions to be made. There's no one that's in the right. There's no one that's in the wrong. And it is literally one of the most human movies of the entire MCU. In fact, it's honestly, it probably should be higher in my list of top 10, where this movie probably should be in the top 5 for me of all time movies. It's fantastic. What? I'll leave this. Yes, it's that good. It is absolutely a wonderful character-driven story. I know you got some issues.
I find this fascinating. We need to have another.
We'll eventually have like our top
conversation where we just talk about
our top 10 movies.
No, just like what's your like? How do you know? How does a movie get to that level, right? Because like what has to be present in order to get something to that level is, I think, very particular and is real. And
we're probably not going to agree on that. And for anyone who's wondering, because if you didn't watch the last episode, what drives a movie for me is character moments, and did it make me feel something or make me think something? Does this movie make me go, do I root for the characters? Do I feel for them? Does it make me feel in some kind of way that motivates me or drives me to think about something? That's my big criteria for a movie is how does it actually impact me as a person?
Man, that's I mean, there's good movies out there, Ty. I just wanna...
I'm not disagreeing with that, and you know, I no, in my defense, I probably need to relook at the list of at least the top 10 list.
Good. That is a great qualifier. With that qualifier, we can continue.
Okay,
All
fantastic.
right. Civil War, I'll tell you, Civil War has something going for it that gets back to the unfortunate reality of copyright. They nail Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the flag bearer for the Marvel Universe. He is the top guy. He's the top seller. He was the most popular comic book. He's the most popular everything, and that's why they sold his rights first. And we get him back, even though he was at the time only a loner, even though now he's back in the fold entirely, right? But that helped immensely. Those moments were incredible. Tony Stark as the mentor, funny jokes with him. He's both playful and conflicted, and he is a great Spider-Man, and I'm very, very happy about it.
The only problem that this movie has is that it actually has too many characters and has to juggle too much, and that's the problem that we're gonna get.
If you feel that way now.
Yes, I know. That's the problem. That is largely the problem with the MCU, is that it has really good storytelling.
But we've gotten into bloat mode.
It's getting into bloat mode where you have too many characters, too many things going on. And we'll get into this. There's one movie that does this going forward very well, and there's one movie that does this very poorly, and we'll talk about that later. But for me,
almost the same movie.
I know. Captain America: Civil War, S tier, fantastic movie. Literally the only problem with it is that there's a little too much going on, or at least too many characters that you can't give everybody their time in the sun.
Yeah, injuring Don Cheadle was really, really good. Creating this conflict between Vision and Scarlet Witch was really, really good, which, by the way, makes her series, which I thought creatively was just so fun, even though I don't know if I'll ever watch it again, of WandaVision. Like, it's just a lot of great things came out of this film. I think it's the zenith. I think that this is the peak. I think that this was the peak MCU.
I'm not 100% with you on that, but it's close.
Well, we're about to have fights.
Yes,
the fights are about to come.
Yes,
okay, continue.
Anyway, so at least for me, wrapping up the Civil War, I can't stop talking about this movie. And here's the problem. For me, this movie should not be called Captain America Civil War. This movie should be called Avengers Civil War. Because it's not a Captain America movie. It's an Avengers movie. This is not Captain America 3.
Yeah. Cap didn't get his movie.
Yeah, unironically, in the way that Avengers 2 is Iron Man 4, more or less, Civil War is more of Avengers 2 in a nutshell. This really is that movie for me personally. And so at least for me on that, this is a wonderful movie. It's great. I could not sing its praises enough. I would probably do its own story at one point by itself. But it does a lot. It sets up Black Panther, and he's a great character. Gives him a lot of focus. Bucky Barnes is still very important. Does a lot for him. Does a lot for Captain America. Does a lot for Iron Man. Does a lot for almost every character. Like, there's very few characters that don't have something to do here. The only problem is it just doesn't have enough exploration for like one or two characters. So I'm going to close out with this one. Definitely S tier, I think, for both of us. Or did you put it in A?
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic movie. And now we're going to be moving on to later on in the year. We got another fall release. It's November 4th of 2016. And out of the box, we have another surprise entry. It's Doctor Strange.
This is my favorite of all the Marvel films.
No shit.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay.
I'm a huge Benedict Cumberbatch fan. And then the world building. This is one where the world is so cool and interesting and it causes me to...
Oh no! He disconnected. We'll wait for him to get back. Just a second here. We'll wait for him to get back. I will message him here in just a second. Anyway, to address what I was talking about here, we're talking about Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is blast. I don't know what that means. Okay. He'll be back in just a moment. CA got him. Anyway, Doctor Strange is fantastic. Hey, there he is. All right. Anyway, to go off where I was going off, and then we can get back to Nate. Nate, I hope you're connected. Doctor Strange is wonderful, and I absolutely agree with this. The world building is top notch. Absolutely kicks ass, takes names. The character is explored, and he's literally like Tony Stark done right. He's really good, he's really competent, but he's an asshole. He's an asshole, but you kind of root for him because he goes through that character journey, and it's done really well. It's sold.
Agreed.
You know, he's trained up. He has to like go through those character building moments where he fails and then he succeeds, that kind of stuff. Sells me the character, makes him believable, wonderful.
Yeah, and you can tell that because of how unique his powers are and everything else that's going on. In a sense, he's overpowered, right? In a sense, he's overpowered in a way, but you kind of know that he's not going to be overpowered in a fight, right? Like, he's not going to come in and kick everybody's butt, but his way of looking at things and problem solving, you can already tell is going to be super cool. I'm really looking forward to his next film.
I am too.
For this exact same reason, but it's like he's overpowered in a sense, but in an actual straight up fight, he's not actually that overpowered. So I find it to be really cool. And his cameo in Ragnarok was phenomenal. So.
All right. Anyway, at least for me, yeah, this movie's A tier. I can't put it in S, and it's not that I think what really kills it for me is that the villain is not bad, but he's not amazing. And honestly, like
the solution to the bad guy problem was hilarious and interesting, so that helps. But
true, at least for me, the problem is Tilda Swinton is actually more of an antagonist than actually the villain is. And then you have Dormammu, which is great, but I don't know how I feel about it, because at one point it's really great because you literally trick a god with the time stone. On the other side of that, it's just like it's a little too easy for him to beat him.
Well, yeah. So like I said, this is one of these things where Doctor Who is going to win fights without having a fight, right? He's going to use his powers and his set to not have a fist fight to end films, and so that makes it kind of different. And so, but
I love how you called him Doctor Who.
Oh, sorry, yeah. So Doctor Strange is going to win fights without it being a fist fight, and so the twist on that also means that the things he's up against aren't going to be fist fighters, right? Like, he's going to go up against circumstances, and his conflict is going to be much more existential, big picture, and it's going to be more of a mind game and a problem-solving deal than it is a fist fight, which means it's the least Marvel of all the films. There is no fist fight to end the stuff.
I'm not complaining of that. I am not complaining of that at all. I love that kind of thing. I love thrillers, that kind of thing.
And that's why, depending on how edgy they want to get with the next one, it could be like, it could be...
It'll either be really, really good or it's going to be really bad.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that.
So anyway, to wrap up that, I think we're in 2017 now. Yes, we are. It is May 5th, 2017. By the way, just to wrap up, movie that we just did.
Doctor Strange.
Yeah, Doctor Strange. A tier for me. A tier for you as well. Cool.
No. He's it's my favorite movie.
Oh yeah, S tier. Okay, my bad. Yeah.
No, it's whatever. He stands in his own category, because it gets back to, so the weakness I think for Marvel, and I happen to agree with Scorsese on this, they are super fun movies. Mm-hmm. I don't see huge depth in the films, and I don't actually have to think all that much for them. And so this is one of the ones that I actually went like,
cool.
Okay,
yeah.
That's why I elevated it to a place that I think very few people would. But it's because its lack of being an MCU film is what made it the most interesting to me. Okay, continue.
No, 100% with that. And just to wrap up my final thoughts on that is that character building is fantastic. The world building is fantastic, although that's an aside. World building can help a movie, but it's never going to be enough to really make it move more than one space for me. Oh. And that's just the thing, because world building's great.
It's interesting.
But if your characters in the world aren't that great, then the movie's kind of worthless.
No, I totally agree with that. I actually think that this is true for most storytelling. Remember, this is my big criteria. Relationships between people end up being the best drivers of story, because it's the most meaningful to us.
Yes.
Life, I'm going to get a little Jordan Peterson on this right now, but like life, I believe that life is all about human connection, that we find meaning through our connection with others. You cannot find meaning on an island. I do not believe that humans are wired to do that. I don't think that our cognitive faculties allow that to happen. And I don't know, because I don't think anybody knows, but I think that just the ability to have thoughts generally and consciousness itself has to have an interaction with other conscious beings in order for itself to elevate and to be redeemed. And so I think that's a really, really big and important deal. Therefore, the most meaningful films are character-driven, and most of the time when people say character-driven, it's the relationships to other characters that drives the character themselves, which makes it super, super interesting and makes movies, the best. And most storytelling that way. So I agree with you. World building is interesting, but it's down the list. It's the interaction and relationships between people that actually drive the best storytelling, and I think that's a universal truth, not just an MCU point.
Thank you.
So.
Hooray. All right, so to jump to the next, it is May 5th.
Doesn't care.
No, I 100% agree with you. I seriously agree with you. You said it exactly in the way that I would. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, May 5th of 2017, and we're back to the Guardians of the Galaxy. It's Volume 2, and I'm going to say that this movie's even better than the last one, where the last one was A tier for me. This movie is S tier. Everything is done right about this movie. It's got the character. Each character has some kind of character moment, except for Groot. But it's Groot, right? But at least for me, all the boxes are checked. Villain is good. Actually, some people had some problem with Ego. I thought it was fantastic. It's a weird villain, but actually I loved that. It was different.
Actually, it gets back to it's a villain where you don't necessarily win by having a fist fight.
Yes.
Right? It's like. It was a villain that was external, but it was also sort of internal, and it was super interesting. Okay, continue.
Yeah, anyway, at least for me, all the characters are great. You have additions where Yondu is fantastic, and he'll get, like, there's a price to be paid where he ends up dying. Spoilers.
Yeah.
But no, movies where the good guys win, but they have to pay a price for it are fantastic. I love that kind of thing. Every character is doing great. Even the side characters have some gravitas, where you don't even think of them that much. Where, was it Sylvester Stallone's in it? For a quick second.
Just looking that up, I was like, isn't this the one where Sylvester Stallone's in it? It's like at the end when they're doing the funeral send-off or whatever. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so at least for me, there is like nothing wrong with this movie. Villain's good. The characters are good. The world building's good.
I see this, like I said before, these are my wife's two favorite films, and they also sort of feel a little less MCU-y. But I see Guardians 2 as being very, very much like Avengers, the first Avengers film, where it hits a lot of the right notes. It's a great show. My wife, she got pretty emotional during the funeral send-off, and Chris Pratt being like, oh crap, like, maybe he was actually a bigger influence on my life than I thought. Like all that stuff. And so it hits a lot of really good notes.
It hits some wonderful notes. And the dynamic between Yondu and Star-Lord is wonderful. And unfortunately, it has to go at a time, but it pulls all the right heartstrings, because you start to see them admit that they really do have an integral relationship. And as that happens, you see that Yondu, it is such a powerful relationship that Yondu will give his life for Jason Quill. Or Peter Quill, sorry.
Like, Yondu is actually not a very good person, but he still has that relationship. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it's the guy who, he's not a good person in the regard that, like, he's not somebody you would ever want as a friend. Because he's
indiscriminately. I mean, he's also a murderer.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a pirate and he's a bad guy, but he also has a heart. He has emotions, right?
By the way, it gets back to this thing. His relationship with Chris Pratt is his redemption. Like, his relationship with Star-Lord is the thing that elevates him beyond his carnal self, right? He gets him to that next level of meaning, and I think that's why it's so interesting.
All right, so yeah, for me, S tier. For you, S tier as well. Fantastic.
I don't know. I think I put both of these as A tier, but for me, there's a small difference there.
Fair enough. So I'm going to wrap that up, and we're getting into the middle of 2017 with Spider-Man: Homecoming.
The bad guy sucks, and so that hurts. Right?
He's okay. He's not nearly as bad as some other villains.
Sure. I mean, the fact that Peter Parker is trying to date the villain's daughter was the most interesting part about that villain.
Yes.
But that's interesting. That's my point.
I kind of disagree with this. For me, Michael Keaton is playing Vulture, and Vulture is actually a believable character, and this kind of relates to sociologically and politically, where I am here in the country, where a lot of people feel disenfranchised, like the system screws them over, that kind of thing. And his character's very believable for me. because it's like, hey, the government screwed me over. I could have made a bunch of money, and now I've just got to be a thief and steal and shit because, you know, hey, if the world's going to fuck me, I'm going to fuck it back. That's a really believable sentiment for me. Doesn't mean I like it, but it definitely means that, like, I can empathize with that. I can humanize that. This is actually a good villain for me.
That's cool.
He's just like, fuck you, Ty.
Man, I don't. So get back to this believability for a minute. So, if the government screws you, this is good motivation to become a villain in a Spider-Man film. That's your contention right now?
I think it's your contention. It's not saying that I would do this, but it's more of like, I can believe this character. He has very human motivations. He's not perfect. He's trying to look out for his family. His business is more or less shut down by the government because he's trying to scrap.
Okay, so he has complicated motives. Is that what you're saying? Is that?
Yeah, he has very complicated motives, and all of them at least. Huh?
That's his redeeming qualities. He's a family man.
To some degree, yeah.
Would he have stormed the Capitol on January 6th?
Unfortunately, he may have. Unfortunately,
would he have been wearing the red hat?
I hate you so much. I'll put it this way. I can believe that would be absolutely the case.
Okay.
Right.
Do you think he would look good in a buffalo hat?
Shut up, dude. All right. So for me, this movie is it's close. I don't know if it's S tier. I know it's definitely A tier. I'm not sure if it's S, but it checks almost every box for me. It has great character relationships. You know, okay. The reason why it's A tier, not S tier, is that it's a cringe ass teenager movie.
This is its weakness, is that almost all the relationships that matter are high school level relationships.
Yes.
It's a coming of age movie in a way,
yes.
Right? And so, you know, I guess you can cut it some slack that way. I don't know. I think that I and this is just me. I don't put a whole bunch of the kid and teenager movies into like anywhere near rarefied air for this exact reason. Like Harry Potter, like gosh, dang. Those are the worst adults who have ever lived, right? Like, good, not like all of them. The Wizarding world needs CPS, right? Child Protective Services need to immediately enter the Wizarding world. Why are no wizards like responsible adults? All of the adults suck. Anyway, and it's very distracting. The only exception is Ender's Game, which was not a good movie. I don't even recommend that people watch it. But the book is like it's the only kid book where I have adult feelings, but it's because they say the kids are so brilliant they basically become adults at age 8. So I'm like, wow, it's cheating. Anyway, that's a side soapbox. But I think that's my problem, is that this is a true coming-of-age teenager movie.
And I'm not a teenager anymore.
And even when I was, I don't know, I was a weird teenager. I always jokingly say I haven't changed at all since I was 15, but I don't think that's true for the majority of mankind. So.
Yeah, my thing is that a lot of this is fantastic. The only real problem I have with it is that there's like teenage moments in it, and particularly in Act 1, it's kind of rough. And we'll get into we'll wrap up actually with the second Spider-Man movie. Will be the last. But I have a lot of the same problems with it. But Spider-Man 1's a good movie. I'm not gonna shun it at all.
Yeah.
It's A tier for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
And
that's fine.
Yeah, we definitely disagree on the villain, but hey, whatever. You know, you do what you do.
That's fine. Yeah, that's right.
So wrapping that up, A tier for me. Where you at with this?
The villains right now. I mean, that's a very normal disagreement to have.
Yeah. Where you at with this? Where'd you rank this?
This is B tier.
All right, fair enough. All right, Chad's getting very feisty, especially particularly with the Harry Potter and stuff. Wait, did I jump?
That's for another day, folks. We can talk about how Harry Potter is actually not good, but it's very nostalgic. Like, I will tell you right now, I bought the books day of, spent 27 hours straight, no sleep, and read them. So, like, I've got some fan cred there. And then when I finished, I said, okay, I'll never have to read these again until I have children, and I'll read them to them. Because it's thin. There's a lot of thinness to Harry Potter. Anyway, continue.
Yeah,
continue.
My comment was about Ender's Game. Yeah, I get that too. Anyway, the next one.
Ender's Game is legit. I've read that 9 times. I just reread Ender's Game this year.
Jesus. All right, it is another fall release. It's November 3rd of 2017, and we are talking about one of my favorite movies. This is Thor Ragnarok.
Is this a comedy?
Huh? It is an action comedy. And it's great because it does it in every way that it needs to.
There's a lot of laugh out loud moments that were very good.
It's not just funny, and it's funny in some right ways. You know, there's a little bit of cruder humor in that, but it's not like anything.
Yeah, it's not distracting. Yeah, it's not distracting. It's great. It's great.
Osiris is taking chat. Absolutely great. But no, this movie is wonderful. This is S tier for me. It's one of my favorite movies. It's funny. It's got great action. It's got great character moments. And the best part is, the villain is good. It's a little bit of a one-dimensional villain, but she does it in the right way where she's a force of nature. And this is the reason why Helen is such a good villain is the same way that like a lot of people like Vader, is that she's menacing. She's pretty one-dimensional, but at least you understand her motivations, which is more than I could say about Vader from my last review.
There's one of them. Yeah, there's one motivation for her, right?
Power, control.
I think it's death. I think her motivation is she just likes watching the world burn, but she's very direct on it. So she's a very direct world destroyer. Like, that's what she is.
Well, that's her motivation in the comic books, but I don't really think that's hers in the movie. I think she wants to be like...
Obviously, you watch this more than me, and I don't want to say bad things about Thor movies because you're in them, but...
The character I actually care most about is Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man. I see more of myself in that character than any other character in the MCU. So let's clear the air with that.
You're a rich billionaire playboy?
I am not a rich... No. I am not a rich billionaire playboy, but I'm an asshole. I am way smarter than the average person everyone around me. I do have things...
MIT at 17?
I hate you so much. I identify more with the character. I identify more with the character than I do with Thor any day of the week. All right?
That's okay. All right, I'll take that. I'll take that correction. Sir, yes, sir.
God damn. Anyway, at least for me, all right, Thor Ragnarok, S tier movie for me. It checks all the boxes in the right way. The villain could be a little bit better because she's a little bit one-dimensional, but in all reality, she's not the only villain, and that's kind of what makes up for this. Fucking Hulk is the antagonist for half of the movie, and it's wonderful and does great. And there's a lot.
His motivations are totally contrary. I mean, you still know he's a good guy, but he's not, right? So that's interesting.
Yes, and Hulk is actually a character, which is excellent. Thor.
Yeah, but so here's the.
Go ahead.
I mean, I don't know what to think about Hulk. Like, and I don't have solutions. So I don't like having hot takes when I don't really have solutions to characters. So I'll keep my mouth shut on this. But like the thing is, when you're in Hulk mode, you cannot be in control. You're supposed to be a force of nature at that point. And Thor Ragnarok says, no, we're done with that. You can now be in Thor. You can now be in Hulk mode and be in control and be a developed character, and you're just big. And it's like, I don't. As he gets more angry, the force of nature is supposed to gain energy over time, and that doesn't happen anymore. And so they redefined him as a character, and I don't.
I like it. I like it.
I am actually glad that you like that because like I said, I don't have something constructive to say about this. But to me, like teenage angst is the Hulk, right? Like you have moments where you just get so angry about stuff that sort of it's not rational anymore. Like Hulk needs to have no rationality. He just needs to get angry, and then the more you try to control him, the anger level grows, and as his anger level grows, his power grows. And that's something that I can relate to, and it's a conundrum. And people have to find ways to deal with folks who are in that place. And MCU people were like, nope, we're going to go ahead and reset the Hulk's character. We'll just give him a bunch of rationality. And, they did that in Thor Ragnarok.
I feel like there's definitely the argument that this movie is a soft reboot, not only for Thor, but for Hulk is absolutely true.
Oh, for sure.
But it's done in every right way for both of these characters.
Entertaining way. I mean, it's such an entertaining movie that, I have a hard time criticizing it. And I don't know what I would have done differently, right? Because, again, I thought Thor was incredibly flat for most of his arc.
Yeah.
So the fact that we got any spice with him at all is interesting, right?
So,
I don't know.
What this movie does for me is that Thor is reset. He doesn't have to have a character arc. He doesn't have to go on his hero's journey like he does with the others. He is the hero. He knows he's the hero, and it starts off that way. And it's not a movie that's about him going through an arc as much as it is him going through a point of view. This is what's happening in my life. Go on the adventure with me. And it's great, and it's a great point of view movie in that regard. But it's also challenges that he has to go about where, all right, he's thrown into weird things where, all right, the antagonist literally breaks Mjolnir. Holy shit! All right, main power antagonist is fucking badass. All right, I'm trying to run home, regroup, you know, kind of do my thing. Oh wait, she followed me, she kicked my ass, and I'm thrown onto Sakaar. And then it's like, oh hey, Hulk's here. Oh wait, this one chick is here. Like, this movie is so amazing in the regard that, you know what? Thor's character is developed. He's not a paragon, but he's, you know, largely developed. You don't need to hit the reset button on him in the regard that you need to have him go on a hero's journey of self-fulfillment nearly as much as, you know what? I know who I am. I don't need to question that. What I need to do is I have things that I have to do as part of my responsibilities and who I am, and that is this story. It's all right, cool. I'm beating, you know, literally starting out. He's beating a bad guy. He's doing hero things. He goes and shows that Loki's being a jackass and not actually dead. And it's literally just progression of the plot, but in a very character-driven way. That is, hey, I have a job to do. I'm a hero. I'm kicking ass. I'm taking names. Oh wait, hero has bad things happen to where the enemy you can't just punch your way out of. You got to regroup. Bad things happen, you know. And then you bring up the Avengers, where you know you kind of make you made new relationships. You bring back your buddy, your friends, and you go out for round 2, and you still fucking lose. Asgard is destroyed. This movie is phenomenally good in the regards that Hulk is wonderful because his reset is not that he's a rage machine. It's that Hulk is becoming a character and not a force of nature. In the same way that Banner is already a character, but now it's separate. He's 2 characters in one now. And so you don't have to worry about Hulk just being a rage monster and literally adding nothing besides smash, smash. Hulk now is something of his own self. He has motivations. He actually has stuff that he cares about. He's actually a character, and that is awesome.
We nerfed him.
Is he?
Right? I mean,
he's a little nerfed. I'm not going to lie with that. Yeah, I'll take that.
He's super nerfed by Endgame. I mean, he's, you know.
I haven't got there yet. I will get there. I will absolutely get there.
I don't have the same love affair with this movie that you do, and I can't really articulate why not. You make good points. You make good points, and I couldn't do anything to improve it, and it's not obviously flawed. I think that the problem is where Thor was at the beginning of the film hamstrings us a lot. And actually, Chad, I think, mentioned this. If even inside the comic books, Hulk is a problem, you have to give him sentience and a character arc that sort of makes some sense. Because if you're just constantly a force of nature, I mean, there's only so much you can do with that. So, like, I understand that, but that it sort of says, okay, you're going to reboot the Hulk. Why do we need him? Mm-hmm. I mean, because like, you just need a strong guy who's smart, I guess, or something. I don't. Like, that's the thing, is, like, the thing that makes the Hulk is now neutered, which is fine, because you can only do so much with the Hulk that you can do, so maybe you should probably just kill him or something. Like, why are we keeping him around?
I don't think they did it wrong in this movie. There's a part where they get it wrong, but this is not the movie. I think they did it absolutely right. The Hulk is its own character, Bruce Banner is its own character, they both have limitations, they both have problems, and they're not overpowered in any way, stretch, or form. And you have to switch between the 2 characters to get what you want. I actually love this.
I know, and I don't have a lot to say beyond that. I mean, so it was an A film for me. It's really fun.
Yeah. To close out for this is S tier, and it's definitely in my top 10. This movie is fantastic. I know you.
Do you have 3 Marvel comic movies so far in like your top 10 films ever?
It's pretty bad.
Woo!
Some of these are really good movies. Don't tell me they're not.
Nerd card. I guess I need to give my nerd card over to you and be like, I guess I'm not worthy of the nerd card. I might be something else. The Geek and Tangent. I'll have to go take it to the remaining members. We have a daily chat on G Chat or whatever it's called anymore, and I'll take it to them. Maybe I should have my nerd card taken from me. We'll see. We'll see what they say. There's
some good movies out there, and I do need to reevaluate my top 10 list. Don't get me wrong. I definitely need to like go through that and actually be like, all right, where's this place out? This is actually deserving of that. There's just a lot of movies that a lot of people like that I don't really care for that much because of one reason or another. You hit one earlier. I'm not revisiting that conversation. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, to go into the next one, it's the start of 2018. We're getting into one hell of a year. It's Black Panther, released February 16th of 2018. What do you have to say about this movie?
So this was a fine movie, and I like the MCU movies where it's totally standalone and the amount of overlap is minimal. So I liked that about this. I really liked the acting. I thought this was a character like relationship driven movie. I thought that it does technically end with a fist fight, but it's sort of a fist fight it's like a family fight, right? That's a family fight you could see happening at an actual barbecue or something, ending in a fist fight, right? So like I liked it a lot. So I put this as an A tier movie. This is where Marvel starts to have a change where it now wants to be a social commentary, right?
In some regards, yes. And
so this film in part was written by Ta-Nehisi Coates, okay? And so like and he's writing the comics right now for Black Panther inside the Marvel universe, and some of the stuff that he has done is like very interesting. He basically turned Red Skull into Jordan Peterson. Like it was just very weird. Okay, so some of that taints me a tiny bit with this film. I actually think just at a straight acting level and some of the relationships that are built and my ability to relate to them almost makes it S tier. But I get distracted. I get distracted by we're making Wakanda into something that isn't, right? Mm-hmm. What is Wakanda? Okay, Wakanda is a fake place. It is super fake. I love, like the continent of Africa has geographic challenges that would not allow for a Wakanda place to exist. But then you want to take a lot of things from the real world Africa, dump them into Wakanda, and then make them wealthy and smart. And like, I get that. I understand why that would be important from a cultural standpoint. And I don't mean to like get into the weirdness that is that topic, but that is distracting to me as I'm watching the film, where I go, okay, we are projecting a worldview that is relevant in the real world. That worldview is relevant in the real world, and we are forcing it into this fantasy world, and I'm not a big fan of that. So that's distracting to me. That might just be a me thing. I might be too sensitive to these particular topics, but that's my take on this. But I liked the characters. I actually really like them a lot. I think it's one of these movies where if I see it on TV, I stop and I watch, right? So it passes that test, and that's a big test for me.
The chat's exploding right now. I'm just looking a little bit of that, make sure no one hits TOS. But anyway, so far everything, a lot of things people are saying I kind of agree with. But here's my thoughts in a nutshell. This movie is very hard for me to rate because of the social commentary, and it's not that I have a problem with that. This movie is not made for me. I definitively recognize that. This is made for a black audience, and I do not identify as black. I don't know what that means, and there's a lot of the translations that I do not understand, and I can't empathize with. Some of it I can, but a lot of it I cannot. And I just have to admit my level here. This is a movie that is not made for me. And so I have to like table some of that, and I have to like put myself into these characters. And this is kind of where the movie kind of goes to hell with me, is that it's not a bad movie except for a few things. What the problem that I have kind of comes into two levels. I don't mind T'Challa as a character. I think he's pretty cool. He's kind of got the Thor thing going on. We already saw who his character was in Civil War. We're now exploring him on his own. He's going through basically a final rite of passage in this movie.
Right. Totally agree.
But it's not like, oh, I need to go on my hero's journey, because you already been through that. You already know who this character is. He doesn't need to do that. It's a little bit of a reset in the regard that he loses powers and he gets it back and all that. But at least for me, what this movie does very well is that most of the characters are believable. Most of the characters are great, and it adds on to it. But the problem is that T'Challa, or Chadwick Boseman, is the standout in this movie, and all the other characters just do not punch nearly as hard as this character does. Actually, the character that is best is M'Baku. It's not even the antagonist, it's M'Baku. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, hold on a second. Shuri is kind of one-dimensional. She's not explored as a character that much at all. She's smart, she's great, she's capable, but I have no idea what her motivation is at all. I don't know why she's doing anything she's doing. And the problem with a lot of these characters for me is they kind of just fall flat. And that's unfortunate. because T'Challa's great.
Yeah, so I want to say that I agree that individually these folks are pretty flat. But all of them matter so deeply to T'Challa, and that adds to the richness of his character. So
True.
the fact that we have these flat characters that are all so dependent on him, and his love and worry for them is so high that I'm okay with it, because the relationships between each other, even though they themselves are not well developed, the relationships between them are so interesting and relatable that I'm like, okay, I'm more in on that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And the best thing about T'Challa that I really like about this movie is he sells me on the idea that he's trying to be a good king. He is being responsible. He's going to make the right. He has to make the right decisions, not for himself, but for his people. It embodies responsibility in a good way.
Sorry, and by the way, I think Chad sort of mentioned this. It's like, hold on a minute. So if we have an ethno-state that has a zero-tolerance immigration policy, things go awesome. Like, gosh, it's just crazy.
I didn't want to touch it. I wasn't going to touch it.
I mean, it is so, like, that's why I say I get distracted while I watch this movie, even though I really liked it. And I actually think Chadwick Boseman as a human is such a good person, such an amazing role model. If anybody has time, go find where he gave a speech at a Denzel Washington dinner. This is like, he was towards the end of his life. We didn't know he was so sick because he kept that so private.
Right.
But he gives a 2.5-minute speech, which just hit me. And it hits Denzel, and it is phenomenal. He is clearly an outstanding person. He has a huge depth to him as a person. His acting, I thought, was very, very good. Of course, we only got to scratch the surface with him. And so he is great. I actually really like the world building, and everything is so good. And I just get so distracted by the garbage. And part of this is because this is in the middle of the Trump era, right? Like, we gotta call it for what it is. This film starts getting developed after Trump has won the election, and like, it sucks, but I don't know if it's me or if it's the movies, right? Because this is not just a Black Panther problem where I start getting distracted by stuff. So I don't know if I just got infected and I'm screwed up because of the Trump effect, or if it's because of Hollywood got screwed up and Disney got screwed up and the wokeness had to be overemphasized as a reaction to the 2016 election. I do not know.
No, I'm with you.
It just sucks because I am. Now I'm like a head case about the Black Panther. And I don't know how to sort that out for myself. I have no bad things to say about the movie on its merits. And as soon as I start thinking about oh, how does this apply to my life? Like, it just totally melts down, and I hate that.
If I get a chance, I definitely want to have a standalone on this movie. And Osiris is in the chat. I definitely want you involved with that. I want your commentary on this particular movie. We will fucking schedule that. Absolutely. My big issue with the movie is that I have no problem with Killmonger. He's actually a really good, interesting character. The problem I have with him is literally he's nega Black Panther. And I'm just like, I hate the problem with like Whiplash and Ironmonger, that kind of thing, where literally the enemy is the exact same as you. That always kills a movie for me in a big way, because it's literally just a mashup of the two people with the same exact powers. And that gets really boring.
Except I see them as like brothers. Like,
right.
That's the thing, is like, I see, if you say to yourself, the conflict is actually an inter-family conflict.
Yeah.
Then I think a lot of that goes away. Like Tony Stark in Iron Man 2 with Whiplash. There's none of that, right? This is an family fight.
It does it way better. I will give you that.
Yeah, and so that's why I think in my mind I've just framed that differently, and I really like it. Like I said at sort of the beginning, I could see two cousins or two brothers getting into a heated conversation along the same lines that Chadwick and Brian B. Jordan, is that his name? The two of them get into, right, on like the merits of an argument about how the world should be and what we should do about it, and literally that coming to blows. I've seen stuff like that.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
And that's how I connected with it. Was this is an in-house fight, and so they are substantially similar because they're basically brothers, and these are brothers duking it out over the direction and the worldview that the family should have, and I connected with that for whatever reason. And and they have that interesting moment of like halfway redemption as he's dying, watching the sunset over Wakanda, right? Like, I don't know, there is a depth and an interesting element to that I think sort of redeems the fact that they are just the mirror opposites of each other. But I don't know. like I said, I'm a head case about this.
No, I'm 100% with you, and you make a good argument, and I wish I had thought about that because you're absolutely right. And I didn't connect with that, but I've had strange relationships with family and community. Right? That's not something that's always a hard thing for me to do because, like, it's only in my 20s that I've really like connected with my family in a more positive way. I'm still really trying to figure out my sense of community because that's really rough for me personally. I don't really feel connected to people a lot, and so that's a level where that is a disconnect for me, and I think you're absolutely right there. But yeah, to wrap up Black Panther, I think it's a solid movie. I was thinking about it beforehand, and I didn't know what I was going to rate it as, but actually overall, it's either in low end of the A tier or very high end of the B tier, and and the problem I have with it is largely just the social commentary is done in the wrong way, and that will bother me a lot, because you need to make people question things, not hand them the answer, and that always drives me bad whenever you have your politics drive a narrative. Fuck you, Star Wars. So yeah, Kathleen Kennedy ruined the other ones, but check out that review if you're still watching. Anyway, without further ado, to wrap this up, this is either very low A tier or very high B tier. I need to think more about this movie, and I probably need to rewatch it. But there's just parts where it doesn't connect for me, and I admit that. I know this movie's not made for me. And there's parts that I'm going to have problems connecting with, which Nate has brought up very well. And so I need to reevaluate this movie. And so what would you have it? A tier?
Yeah. I had it high A tier, almost S tier. Again, and the only reason it's probably not S tier is because I'm a head case.
Fair enough. Okay.
People, personal failings.
It is April 27th of 2018, and this is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. It's Infinity War, and we're getting to the end. We're closing out the MCU, and we're at hour 56 minutes. But this movie is fantastic. But go ahead, I'll let you go first.
So I went into this movie knowing that there were going to be problems because of bloat. I knew they had to bring everybody together, and they were like parading all of the actors around from like every movie, and so I just knew that this could not be a phenomenal film. So I went in with guarded expectations. Then the day of the film, it was getting hyped like crazy all over Twitter, right? Like absolutely hyped like mad. They're like, this is like Empire Strikes Back level of twist. And I went in and I was like, I should have kept my original expectations because there's just a lot of problems. There are interesting things that happen. They allow Thanos to win. I guess that's the twist. But of course, he doesn't really win. It's just a 2-part movie. Like, come on. We all know that there's going to be some stupid time travel multiverse crap after this. And I knew that was going to happen, and I was irritated by that going into the film. Because, like, what else are they going to do? Like, they have to let Thanos win. Thanos winning is going to be hell on Earth. And then what? You have to time travel. And as soon as you do that, you lose. Gosh,
that didn't bother me because I was holding out hope that they weren't going to do that, and I didn't believe that they were going to go down the time travel route until I saw Ant-Man and the Wasp. We'll talk about that one next anyway. But for me, this movie, standalone or part of the MCU as a greater whole, is fantastic. The only problem that this movie has is bloat. And I'll actually put it this way. Yeah. The wonderful thing about this movie is the protagonist is the villain, and it's fantastic for that. They didn't do it the wrong way. What? Yes. No, seriously. The reason reason that this movie works is that this is not an Avengers movie in the same way that we're expecting, where it's focused around our core cast. It's actually the Thanos movie. This is his story. This is his hero's journey, except it's the villain's journey. And our heroes that we're used to are actually the antagonists. And that's why they're not all together doing an Avenger thing, is that he's playing it smart. He's divide and conquer. He's dealing with them one by one. He's not letting them all get together. He's collecting the stones, which are basically the MacGuffins of the movie. And a long story short, this is quintessentially, for the first time that I've seen, the bad guys movie. And it fucking knocks it out of the park for me.
It's a really charitable this film. But we are going so long, let's just let's just go bag on Endgame together.
No, I'm not there yet, but we're almost there. Yeah, like for me, this movie is S tier. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal because it makes the heroes have roles. It has wonderful things going on for it. But the bad guy actually wins. I know there's a two-part here, but you don't know what's going to happen because all the way up. Yeah. Hold on a minute.
Anyway, I said,
anyway.
I knew this was going to happen once they started releasing who all was going to be in the movie. I was like, time travel is coming.
The only problem I had with this movie at all was the fact that it does have a little bloat where some characters don't get any screen time or like anything to do. Drax particularly is let down, but that's fine. You have to let somebody go when you have a universe this big. But when it focuses on, it does it really well. It does great. This movie is phenomenal for me. It's absolutely wonderful. It checks.
What's Thanos' motivation and why does it make sense? Could you just explain that to me really quick?
He's insane. But it's yeah. I'm sorry. What? Okay.
I need a 2.5-hour movie to go understand an insane person better.
Yeah, like unironically, yes. Like he's insane. He believes that the world is critically out of balance. You talked about this on the Geek and the Tangent, and I wish I would have been able to be part of this conversation. And he's a great villain because he embodies what so many people are having the problem with today. And even I feel this pull. I feel this problem where we have our institutions. We have the way that the world works. And it's gotten so bad where people don't empathize with what's going on, where we don't trust our leaders, we don't trust what's going on, we don't trust our news, what have you. And there's different levels. I'm not going to go into my own political leanings here. But a lot of people, whether it's the far right, far left, and even someone at the center, is getting to the point where we have to start making drastic action to fix the way the world's working because it's getting all bent out of shape. And Thanos is the personification of that in a nutshell. The world's fucked up. We have to take drastic action. I'm going to literally snap half the fucking universe out of existence to fix it. Thanos is a great commentary on where we are politically and socially right now. Is that people are so hell-bent that they're willing to throw out the baby with the bathwater at this point to get things fixed. Even I'm falling into it with this.
So, normal bad guys want to be Hitler, right?
Sometimes.
Or a totalitarian schmuck. I mean, I don't know. Is Hitler too specific?
Yeah, sometimes a lot of villains are, I'm bad for bad sake, and usually it's just like, I want to rule the world, I want to conquer it. He's different in the regard that he doesn't want to rule, he wants to literally break the universe so he can fix it. And that's something that
does he want to fix it, though?
Yeah, he does.
He ever fix it?
Yeah, like, literally, his whole thing is that he wants to achieve balance. He wants to fix the universe. And ironically, like this is the beauty of this character. He is so fucking warped that he believes the only way to fix the universe is to break it.
I mean, his argument is a Malthusian argument.
Yes, it is.
There's not enough resources, and so I need to cull half the population so that we don't have a resource issue. But then he retires to a small camp, to like a hut. Like, that's why I say he's not fixing anything.
That's Endgame, yeah, but at least for me...
So your version of Thanos, he's really awesome? Is that what you're about to say? Because
I'm not saying he's awesome.
Your version of Thanos would be really cool. That's interesting to me, but I just...
No, what I'm trying to say is that this character at least makes a lot of sense for me, is a great social commentary for me, both then and now, where a lot of people are ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Whatever principles you believe in, whatever things that hold up our society, you know what? If we have to break it for a minute to fix it, we can do it. I can empathize with that a lot. I've talked about you with this a lot personally. Is that?
Yeah. I don't know if that's him. I think that you want him to be that. I just don't know if he is that.
I really think he is. And
I didn't really think it. Look, I was so disappointed with Infinity War. I've not gone back to watch it again.
Oh my god.
I have zero interest in actually doing that, but I actually might now. And I'm like, I'm never watching Endgame ever again. Maybe I will have to, so I can more straightforwardly talk about this, because I'm just coming from a place of ignorance right now. I never saw Thanos as that interesting, because even for Thanos, he makes decisions that don't make sense, in my estimation. Because if you say, we have a resource consumption problem, I will fix that resource consumption problem by destroying 1/2 of the population. allegedly this guy lives a long time, right? Like he's not connected to like a.
You have to do it over and
device.
over again, kind of thing.
Right, like
Yeah.
you have immense technology. He acts like he's a very wise person and has thought through a bunch of stuff. And apparently, he literally thought, "I'm going to do this once and go retire in a freaking hut."
Yeah.
And like,
That's
not even-
No, that's the insane part. That's the problem I have with a lot of like far right or far left reactionaries is that they basically want to wipe the board, they want to clean it, and they think that after we do that, it's gonna be perfect, and we're gonna live in utopia.
But if that was a vehicle to him taking power, and somehow he could connect culling half the population to him ruling the remainder, I might actually be more credible to that. But then the problem, and then he's just a normal bad guy again. He just wants to run things. The Thanos at the end of Endgame is not the Thanos you just described, because he goes,
True.
"Oh, it turns out once I cull half the population, you people still suck."
Yeah, unironically,
like this now?
unironically, the what you're describing is what we have in Endgame, and that's where I'll start ripping into this because they do it all wrong. But we need to jump. We've got 2 movies to hit before Endgame, so we'll knock that out real quick. For me, this movie's S tier. I don't know where you're at on this one, but it sounds like it doesn't even hit C tier.
No, it's B tier. I think. Yeah, I think I B tiered this. Yeah, I B tiered this. This was my last B tier, and it's like it was well put together. Like there were some things about it that made sense, but it was inherently flawed from the get-go. I think the bad guy. People say that he's so interesting. I don't think he's that interesting. We could talk about interesting bad guys sometime. I think there are very few interesting bad guys in the whole MCU. I mean, this is its problem.
Yeah, I'll simply state this as my final thought. The reason why so many people thought this character was interesting and that this was a great villain is because they empathize with this villain. They think the world's fucked up and they need to make drastic action to fix it. I absolutely believe that's what the case is.
Man, like I said, I gotta go rewatch this. You might be right. Like. I might just have a bad attitude. I don't know. All right, good. Continue. Next.
All right, next it is July 6th of 2018. We're talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp. And
yeah, it was just one reboot of Ant-Man. It was fine. Next movie. Seriously, like it follows the same script. I can't even remember who's the bad guy in that one. It's the ghost lady, right?
Yeah,
like
it's the ghost. I think this movie is even better than the original.
I mean, they're like right there. I didn't feel like it slid back. I still found it as entertaining. I did think that the bad guy was better, or at least way more interesting, right? She's sort of this tortured soul, and then you go down this like whole rabbit hole thing, and it was very interesting in that sense.
This movie is S tier for me. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. There is nothing wrong with this movie at all for me.
Nothing wrong with this movie.
Characters have motivation. They have great understanding. They have implications between themselves. I don't know what's wrong with this movie. Like, you'd have to throw it at me. The villain's good. Main characters are good. World building's fine. Everything.
What's the character development between Ant-Man and Wasp?
We're talking about.
Did any relationships change? Did he like grow as a person, or is he just kind of like going on the next quest?
I think it's more of a next quest kind of thing, but that doesn't bother me. I think that's what the MCU does well. I think the part there is that there is a growing relationship between Scott and Hope, but it's not to the point where it's overbearing, where they're like, oh, they're making out at the end or whatever, all that shit. It's a good continuation from Ant-Man 1. It really is. I think they hit all the right boxes where they don't oversell the relationship, they don't undersell the relationship. I think it works.
You're just like, I read so much that we just think everything he's in is phenomenal.
That's whatever.
It's fine. He is incredible. He's so charismatic. He's very interesting. By the way, Charisma On Demand YouTube channel. They do some really good work on Paul Rudd. It's really good. I recommend it. Continue.
All right.
Are you eating Subway?
I was.
Good man. Nothing wrong with Subway.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll wrap up with that one. I loved it. Well, now we get to start our bitching fest. It is March 8th of 2019, and it is Captain Marvel. Go ahead.
It makes no sense. The movie was bad. The character was bad. The people around the character were bad. They wanted her to be something that she wasn't. Everybody talked about Captain Marvel as though she was this great person, and she's not that person. It's like, oh, let me tell you, back when you aren't yourself, you were really like a good person and a good character. We're not going to see any of that, but I promise you, in the past, you were this great character. But now in the present, you're Superman. You have no weaknesses or flaws. You're going to do this by yourself. You were oppressed as a woman back in the 90s, apparently. And it's like nothing interesting happens. Nothing interesting happens. They try to do a twist. The twist sucks. It's not believable. Doesn't make any sense. She's such a terrible, uncharismatic person that it makes everything stupid. The movie literally was, we just need to introduce Captain Marvel to you. We have a political statement to make, and she's OP. We have an OP woman. The only OP character in the entire universe has to be a woman, and we're going to shove that down your throat. Like, okay, nothing happened. Like, the bad guy isn't interesting. He never stood a chance. I never once felt like there was any emotional stake other than girl power. I'm out. It makes no sense. Like, I had to tell the Geek Nerd and Tangent guys I will not come on to talk about this movie because they had an episode where they invited 2 women on to talk about how great this movie was for them as a gender. And I was like, this is really important that I not be a part of this conversation.
Yeah.
It's like really important that I not be a part of this conversation. It's like, oh, we get to have an unbelievable, fake, overpowered character now, just like the men used to do. Like, look, if you think that you need to have a moment like men did it from the 1950s and bring it to the present, again, I don't think equity is a good idea if that's what that means, right? Like, oh, we need to go be the worst version of men from the 1950s. Now we get to have our moment. It's like, I don't get that.
I'm gonna take everything that you said. I'm gonna copy paste it. I'm gonna say this movie is fucking F tier garbage. Get out of here.
It's the worst. Next.
Cool. All right, we're up to the next one.
I got a freaking strike from my internet service provider because I downloaded this movie so I could watch it for Geek Nerd and Tangent. Then once I watched it, I got emailed and it says digital copyright, blah blah blah. If this happens again, we're gonna yank your internet service.
Okay.
So I just have a lot of negative feelings towards this film.
It's April 26th of 2019. We're opening up the summer with the greatest event in movie history. It's Avengers Endgame. And do you want me to start, or do you want to start?
Yeah. I think you should just go ahead and say why this is a bad movie.
This movie does literally fucking everything wrong. This is what you do not do in storytelling, okay? You wrote yourself into a box. You wrote yourself into a really good box, and it would be interesting if you do it right. This is not how you do it right. Time travel is always fucked. If you have to do it right.
I totally agree with.
Time travel is a great theme when you do it like Back to the Future. But they fucked it up. They weren't even consistent with their own.
It's Back to the Future. They said that at the beginning of the movie.
Midway through. Yeah, like the problem with this movie is that it's done in every single possible fucking wrong way. And this movie isn't even an Avengers movie. It's a Captain America movie. And that's actually probably the most grievous insult that I have with this. All right, so where do I start? Literally, prologue is killing Thanos. Way to fucking go. Way to ruin the movie literally in the first 30 minutes. You killed the main antagonist. Da-da-da. What do you do? All right.
Back.
Huh?
I knew he was coming back.
Yeah. It was stupid. All right, cool. So
bad movie. This is a bad movie.
This movie is a terrible movie. All right. So let's get into this. We have Act 1 is literally bring all the Avengers back together. Absolutely what should have been done. You bring the survivors together, you put everybody in the same house, and you figure out what to do. And they're like, hey, we're going to go kill Thanos. Up until that point, which is still that's the prologue. That's good. As soon as they fly away, it's fucked, especially when Robert Downey Jr. or Tony Stark isn't even on board. Literally, the prologue starts it out, does well, and as soon as they decide they're going to go after the fight, it's fucked from that point on. Because the entire first act, after the prologue, is just figuring out what everybody's doing 5 years down the road, and basically trying to summon up everybody to get the band back together to do that. And no, it's done absolutely in the worst way. Act 2 is the time heist shit, which just doesn't work for me at all. Like, all right, cool. It's believable. It's a thought, but you wrote yourself into a box and you took the shittiest way out of it possible. And then Act 3 is the final confrontation where Thanos is back and all things go to hell, and then you gotta have the big old final fight. No, this movie is garbage. What this should have been is that the prologue was correct, but it should have been Act 1, where Act 1 was getting everyone back together. Act 2 should have been the character moments that makes them go, hey, look, we're down, we're defeated, but we're not out yet. It's literally getting the band back together to the point where it's like, hey, look, everyone has to have their character moments. And to show you what they fuck up, Iron Man, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark never had the redemption between each other after Civil War. The entire second act should have been that. Is Steve, trying to get his buddy back in the fight. It's like, look, we owe it to ourselves to save our friends. We have to go beat this son of a bitch. And Tony's moment should have been, dude, the kid's gone. Literally, like the loss of Peter Parker should have been weighing on him. That kind of thing. Like, what do? We could make it even worse. The character moments between those two should have been the entirety focus of the second act of getting the team back together, where Captain America convinces Iron Man, yeah, we need to go back, we need to be a team, because the where they fuck it up, where the movie goes to hell, is the scene where it's like, you said we win together and we lost. And the rebuttal should have been, and this should have been in Act 2, is that Captain America should have said, no, you weren't by my side. We were never going to win unless I had you. And that would be the scene. And you should have had John Cheadle, War Machine, trying to convince Tony. It's like, you know what? Like, the kid doesn't come back unless we try. There's so many character moments that you could have explored and really hit out. Hulk becomes Professor Hulk in a jump. You don't even see the transition. You don't see anything what goes on. You could have made this character fantastic, where you brought Bruce Banner and the Hulk together into one character, being Professor Hulk, and there could have been a wonderful character moment dive into that during the second act. That would have been a great thing for him.
Yeah, but how does it end? What do you do in the third act?
Huh? What do you do?
Everybody dead?
No. The third act is literally the final battle, where you have the core Avengers team. So you're not overloaded with fucking everybody, right? It's right. Everyone who it's the core Avengers team, the core 6, and anyone who's still left alive. So that's what? It's War Machine, that's Ant-Man, that is a few extras. It works because it's balanced. Everyone has something to do. A few things that are left, and what
you bring back the dead people. That's what I want to know.
That is literally the climax of the movie, is the final fight. What I would have done is literally, Natasha probably would have died. Captain America probably would have died in the fight, and like one of them would have made the ultimate sacrifice, so the gauntlet comes off, and then what I would have done is Tony would have snapped. He would have brought everyone back, and instead of dying,
you wouldn't have destroyed the stones.
No.
As part of the end
fuck
of
that. That was
Infinity War.
stupid as ass. Absolute fucking moronic. No, the stones you can't. The stones are Infinity Stones. You don't destroy the fucking Infinity Stones. Fuck that nonsense. No, what the final act should have been is literally like the core 6 plus fights Thanos in a drop down all for nothing battle. You could literally have Thanos bring back his entire Black Hand army if you wanted to, and have the ultimate showdown just between that core group. They pull it off through like sheer miraculousness, and literally people die. Black Widow could die, Captain America could die. If you want to kill Iron Man, you can kill him too. People should die.
Well, they have to, because they're getting too expensive.
I'm not going to get to that, but yeah, you should have had people die. Things, a high price to be paid, but the good guys actually do pull it off. What I would have done, Tony snaps, and the whole thing about his arm being fucked up is that he snaps and he loses his arm, where he can't be Iron Man anymore. And I literally would have gone off with that towards the end, is that his character arc comes to full circle, where he's addicted to being Iron Man, and it literally almost kills him, and he has to stop being Iron Man. So he becomes Director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and you would have had that going forward. So Chris Evans has paid the ultimate price as part of his character, instead of getting everything he ever wanted at the end, which pisses me off so much, because that is the antithesis of this character.
But it makes him a murderer. Have you thought about the implications as to what he did? This is why I hate time travel movies. He goes back in time to hook up with his girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she had a life with children.
True.
With a man. And because Captain America, Mr. Pure, decides those people are not worthy of existence, I'm going to go interrupt that timeline and go hook up with my girl. Like, man, that's dark. That's some dark shiz. And we just were like, oh, it's so great. Look, Captain America. By the way, the directors and writers of Endgame have a 25-minute interview with, like, I think it's Vanity Magazine. And that 25-minute interview was taped. So you can go onto YouTube and you can watch it. And they say, oh, we decided that Tony Stark needed to lose his life and Captain America needed to get a life, right? They were going to flip the script. Tony Tony would never self-sacrifice, and he has this interesting playboy life, and like, all right, Captain America is Captain. I sacrifice everything. I don't have time to have any attachments and have my own life. I'm too busy taking care of everybody else. They wanted to flip that. So suddenly, Captain America does something selfish, and Iron Man does something selfless.
And it ruins everything. It literally ruins everything for me.
Anyway, like I said, I wasn't hot on Infinity War, and so I didn't know how I knew they were going to do this time travel garbage because I felt like they had to, and I also thought that was going to be part of their next wave. Like, they wanted to open up the ability to really go off in crazy different directions with storylines. And it's built into the comic books, and so I felt like that was inevitable, and I knew I wasn't going to like it, and so I had a bad attitude going in. But the stuff that irritated me were Tony decides, I'm going to do the ultimate sacrifice, and he is not going to allow, like, he doesn't snap to go back to that moment and just hit reset from then. Right? Why? Because of his daughter. We're literally going to just have the hardship and suffering of 5 years for all of mankind just so that I don't interrupt the creation of my daughter and the experiences I've had with her on a lake. I'm still going to have her, right? Probably. I'm still going to marry Potts. Like, that doesn't change anything. So he gets like this huge moral complex. I cannot mess up my daughter's timeline. And Captain Frickin' America is like, oh, I'm going to go ruin entire generations. Like, that doesn't bother me one bit. And I'm
kind of with you with that. And I don't have to even get into the implications. My thing is, this is just bad story writing. And it's amazing because for me, Infinity War is such amazing storyline and storytelling, and then they fucking drop it.
The writers and directors of this movie said this is like the first movie they've ever done by themselves. And so they literally picked up a book, How to Write a Screenplay, after they'd been hired to write Endgame. So just to give you the
same writers and the same directors do Endgame as Infinity War, and it's just amazing because it's a completely different tone shift for me. One of the best movies I've seen to one of the worst movies I've seen. And part of it is how they relate to each other in the expanded universe that they're in. But Endgame, a lot of people love this movie. A lot of people like it. Fuck this movie. This movie is F-tier garbage. This is absolutely what you don't do in a movie.
Yeah. I thought Infinity War was pretty bad, and this one was worse. So, that's,
Okay. Yeah. Endgame for me is absolute garbage. I don't think I'm ever going to go out of my way to watch it. It's got some great scenes. It's got some great production values, but that's it. The story is terrible. I hated this movie. I was pissed coming out of the theater watching this.
I'm gonna give you. Sorry, we need to end. It's late.
Oh, we got one more left anyway. It's Far From Home.
Oh, which I haven't seen. Okay, so we're good. I have nothing to say on this. Is it good?
I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot.
Is it the best of the Spider-Man movies? I hope it is.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. That gives me hope.
This movie.
Either, but
this movie's A tier, and the only problem I have with it is that it doesn't have the full cringe fest of being a teenage movie for the entire movie. Act 1 sucks. Act 1 is lame and it's cringe, but then as soon as who will be Mysterio shows up, it starts interacting with Peter, it's off to the races, and it becomes a wonderful movie. It's absolutely.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's super interesting. All right, public. I love you guys. I need to go.
No problem.
MCU. Have you seen the film 1917? Have you seen that movie?
I need to watch it. It's a Chris. No, it's not a Chris Nolan film. I'm thinking of Dunkirk.
No, it's not. It's not. It's a World War I film. Mm-hmm. You will feel things, and then once you feel those things, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is like a different class of film than anything that's ever come out of Disney, ever. Much love, man. I'll talk to you soon.
I've been joined by Nate Dallin for the MCU Infinity Saga review. It's been a wonderful time with you. It's been 2 hours and 20 minutes. Thank you so much for giving me all your time. Definitely check him out on my geopolitical show and my Mask Off show. He is fantastic. He's got a lot of content with me, and he'll have soon more. We'll be talking about immigration the next time we see him over on Geopolitics with Tyberius D. Until then, this has been Infinity Saga Review. I've been Tyberius D with Tyberius Reviews, and I hope you all have a wonderful time. And we'll catch you next time.